Welcome to No Shame, episode 109. Happy New Year, now, yeah, Happy New Year. We're in the new year already. My God, 2020. We're in the 20s. So this is, I've lived in the 80s, the 90s, the 10s, and the 20s. A bit of a hipster I am. This week we have a man that the last time I had you on, it was more about, I think, the idea of your story and telling some of the massive things you've done. And to be honest, I became a bigger fan of you, Terry, over that time. To be honest, I would put you down in my top 5 as one of my teachers. Now I've been looking at a lot of your stuff, and there was a great comment someone said to me, and I was saying that, and I was like, that's a brilliant way to describe him. Right, this is what someone said to me. I seen your man Terry on your podcast. He was alright, wasn't he? Like he could be a posh twat, but he was actually alright, buddy. And I was like, do you know what? He would really appreciate that, and that's what I wrote back to that lad. I did. I was like, Terry's a man that definitely he could blend in behind anything, but he doesn't. He's a real motherfucker. Terry McMahon, ladies and gentlemen, filmmaker, absolutely extraordinary, activist, bleeding one of the Avengers Incredibles in Ireland, helping the scene. Terry, what's the crack?
It's good to see you, Paddy.
That's the best introduction you've ever had, no?
Depends. I've been on a few orgies where I was introduced even better than that.
I hope you, as the man that's staying on for a long time, I hope that's what he introduced you as, is it?
Once Viagra was invented, yeah.
Oh, fuck it, yeah. Hope it doesn't get stuck in your neck, you got a stiff neck. Where are we at as a society now, Terry?
Jesus. It's interesting because even obviously that trite joke about Viagra, but they say that the great miracle of modern times was going to the moon. But if you go all the way back throughout history, they're always looking for the elixir of youth. They're always looking for the thing to defy reality. And when you became older, you had all the knowledge, but none of the physical capacity to be the lover that you dreamed of being when you were too lonely or too incapable. But you had the strength and the physical youth. Then we invented Viagra. And now all that history suddenly accumulates in the last decade where reality has been completely turned on its head. And now you're able to take a pill or two and all that knowledge that you've acquired, but your body doesn't betray you anymore. And that's, to me, like a metaphor for what we've become in general, where we have suddenly reversed every single meaning of every single word and language, of every single ethic, of every single action, and turned it on its head. And the lie has become the truth, and the liars have taken over everything. And the people who seek the truth are now the enemy. I think that's what we've done in 10 years.
It has been totally that. Yeah, to be the good guy now is like even like the words like conspiracy theories and all of these, like you're crazy for thinking like that. Sure, you could never do that. All of them doubt things is like it's not only have we thought like that. I think the other people around us are taught to reinforce them thoughts in our heads. Am I right in saying that?
But even the idea of a conspiracy theorist. You know, conspiracy theory used to be a phrase that you'd use to denigrate somebody, and very often with justification, or so we thought. So conspiracy theorists were wackos, they were crazy, they saw the world that didn't exist. Now you look at the reality of our world, and the conspiracy theories look like they were amateur ideas. The conspiracy theorists looked like they were so far behind the ball that they actually didn't see just how dangerous the world actually was. They looked like they were naive. We exist in a culture right now where, and again, for better or for worse, because there are some aspects of it that are better as well, where it creates in us a yearning to transcend the limitations that have been existing before this moment. So the idea of, again, a certain age being a certain type of man, we've transcended all that. The idea of physicality, the idea of deciding that you are in your peak at your, at 25 and you are too old at 50 to even conceive of the idea of transforming your life or transforming your body, where you've witnessed personally many, many times how that has been completely reversed. And we've discovered, science has literally discovered that the muscle tissue keeps growing well into your 90s if it's exercised, which is an amazing idea. But that's the good side of it. The reverse side of it is where we got this fast forward functional idea that we demand right here, right now, everything we've always wanted. And when you get those people in power and you get those people at the controls, we're all in trouble. because they want everything right here, right now, and they don't care who has to be hurt or who has to die for them to get it. And that's the realm of politics. It's the realm of who we've become as a people.
Consumerism as well, and the same idea of like pushing products to the front of people's minds and making people into these groups that you talk about, in the way of like a man in his 50s has to think like this, a man in his 30s has to think like this. They need us to think like this in a way, and saying, because they have products that they need to sell and they need to put them into certain groups of people to buy them.
But this is the thing, is that like advertising has been there, you know, for a long time. But what's interesting is advertisers always took the idea of art and the idea of what artists do, and it's like going into a whorehouse looking for love. You're very naive to think you're going to find love in a whorehouse, but you will find an approximation of that brief frisson of what it's like to be with somebody who is getting paid to fake it for you, but still, for that brief time frame, you can click your brain into thinking that it's almost real. So advertisers have taken the idea of art and the idea of what it means to make somebody feel inspired, and they've put that seed in us to sell us a product. So now we look at something and we go, I can be remarkable at anything I want to be remarkable at, because an advertising product has told me that's the case. Now, that's not true. Most people are not remarkable at most things. Remarkable people are exceptional and remarkable because they defy all precedent to become a tiny group of people who turn it upside down. That's what it means to be an elite athlete, what it means to be an elite at anything. But advertisers tell us these things to make us believe in our sordid little lives, in our lonely little lives, that we too can be fill in the blank. And obviously it's a lie, and we know it's a lie, but the frisson, that adrenaline rush, that serotonin rush that it gives us, that makes us briefly think, like jerking off to porn, that we are alive for a brief second. Then you clean up, you turn off the computer, and you're lonelier than ever. But who cares? Because you'll come back tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow you'll sign on and pay money for the next tier of that next brief serotonin injection, before eventually you're so lonely you get off the chair, put a rope around your neck and jump. And then you're just another moron gone, to be replaced by another series of morons who buy into that upper echelon of the hit, the fix, the kick.
It's nearly like making us like it's like people are becoming floppy disks or something. If you don't know what floppy disks are, kids, they're disks we used to use back in the 90s, and they saved everything. I think
I'm getting so old. I thought you said people are becoming floppy dicks. And I'm going,
yeah,
has he been watching my bedroom?
You started that with the Viagra. I think we're very blessed with, my mother was my consumer, and she put into my head that very young, and kind of bypassed a lot of that stuff. I think the idea of wanting to have things to make me complete, and I think that's when people say to me, where did it come from? And I think that's what it was. My mum, like, I am her boy. You cannot say anything about me. She's an Irish mother. She will chop your head off with a slipper if you ever say anything about a young fella. And as a kid, she always encouraged me like that. Something happened. So the question I asked you at the start was, where are we as society? I've been thinking about this lately, and I had a mad glimmer of hope yesterday, and it was brilliant. And I've been thinking of this for a little while now. I'm trying to think of where the youth are going to get their hardship from. That the youth that when I know where you got your hardship from growing up, the society that was in, it was a hard society. I know where I got my hardship growing up, and then these days, the parents that are the parents of our kids are worriers, because we know the world is scary, and we came up in a little bit, I think, of a scarier world. But we know that there's this exposure with social media and all of these things that can teach our kids and ruin our kids in certain ways, and there's so many more dangers, so we're so protective of them. I came across a group yesterday, right? Someone sent me a message, and these kids in a road in Kingswood had decided to make a bake sale. And what they did is, right, they got 30 pieces of paper on their little road, and they drew a sign for each one, right? So hand and pencil, and dropped it into every single door a few days before it. And then they turned up and they had them. Now, someone messaged me and said, listen, you have to make it down here. And I said, 100%, I love a bake sale. So I ended up going down to the bake sale, and these kids are there, and they're screaming, help the homeless. I could hear it on the corner. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is brilliant. Like, this now all we got to do is nurture these people and not let them get affected by this stuff that we're talking about, the consumerism and the idea of your phone ruining their head and dumbing it down, and keep this the way it is and just grow this, and then society is going to be all right. Maybe we're in a situation at the end of 100 years, so say since the forming of the state, it probably takes a little while. We live on an island, so we get to see the change, I think, a little bit easier, because we're not constantly influxed as much as we would be with the mainland, with people passing through and all of this kind of stuff. So maybe we're at a situation now where our kids are watching what's going on. They're watching this homeless crisis. They're watching the people like Leo Varadkar and all these fuckers robbing the place, and they're asking their parents the right questions. Parents are good people these days. Generally, society are good people because they're willing to work hard and not get as much benefits as they used to back in the day. And I think the society is being a little bit quiet. They're quiet about it. So to me, parents are really good out there. As long as they can look after their kids, as long as they have a roof over their head, the necessities is what they're valuing in a way. Where the Celtic Tiger time in a way, like where it was like, maybe we didn't just value our kids and our houses and stuff like that. We valued the speed boats and the cars and the whore houses and all of this kind of stuff, you know. Maybe we're in a situation now where these kids are actually the saviours. These are going to be the future. The generation that's raised now is going to be affected so much by this homelessness crisis that they're going to grow up and want to do something about it. People like me, people like Anthony Flynn, people like Mark Ward, people like Lynn Ruan, people like Louise Dunn, Carl King, many other people that we know that are actually going into into politics and into the Dáil now and stuff like that. Maybe it just took us a while to grow up. Like, I seen this stuff as a kid and I was like, right, I have to do something about this. But I had to grow up as well, and I had to go and get educated. I think at the glimmer of hope of the failure of the worst state of the health system, the homeless system, all of these things, that we might be in a situation where now the people that are going to change it have arrived. That's what I'm starting to see. And these kids behind me just kind of, yesterday we're all right. We are going to be all right. Where we can look at this gloom. It's like we're driving off a cliff and it's like, no, it's never going to go back. I think yesterday, after seeing that, and with the way I believe and what I've seen being doing is now, that this is coming to the end. The storm is getting the worst time. It's getting worse. This is the worst, the darkest before the dawn. I think that's where we're at now in society, and it's great because it kind of gave me loads of energy yesterday. I was buzzing. I think we're at a stage where these fuckers are now seen for what they really are. That social media has opened it up. Information has got so much better. People are wide to newspapers now. You know, we're in an age now, I think, in these last few years coming in now, that I think the game is up for these lads. You know, people are. It's no longer the guy in the suit that's in the Dáil is now trusted the way he used to be trusted by the greaters of society.
I hope you're right. I don't believe it's all doom and gloom. I don't believe that, for example, that the internet is a horror show that's destroying the world. I think it's an amazing thing. I do know, I'm going to say a couple of things that's going to piss people off, but I think it's important that occasionally...
Brilliant. We love pissing people off.
But it's important occasionally to be able to put ideas out there, even some that you might not necessarily subscribe to, but to open up a conversation. So bear that in mind. But I have 5 children, and I have 5 children ranging in the age from 24 right down to 9 weeks. So it's essentially a generation. So I've seen that generation. I think children are always the saviors. I think they're incredible. I think the internet has been profoundly empowering to them. I don't think it's draining their brain. I don't think those things. I remember when we were younger, if somebody was reading a book, it was regarded as something to aspire to and something beautiful. Now if somebody's on a phone, it's regarded as something to be offended by and to be shut down. I also remember as a child being so deeply lonely and having no idea how to engage with anywhere at any time and being told to shut the fuck up. Children should be seen and not heard.
I was about to say that.
So this idea that children are somehow moronic zombies walking around being controlled by the internet, I don't subscribe to. But I also don't believe that we are in a situation where we have somehow learned from evidence. We are now in a situation where we got to ask, what does evidence mean anymore? As what was her name? Conway. Is it Sally Ann Conway? Trump's right-hand woman. She says there are facts and there are alternative facts. And when that's presented as an acceptable reality, we got to ask, what is the meaning of language anymore? So when we talk about the profound change that's possible, that we now know that these people are corrupt, and therefore as a result of knowing we will take action. Unfortunately, knowing is not enough to inspire us to take action. So when I talk about language, and as I said, I don't mean this in any way disrespectfully to anybody, but we should be able to have conversations about certain things. If you look at our recent referendum, we had 2 recent referendums. One was related to equality, which is the right to marriage for gay people, and the second one was the right to abortion. In the equality referendum, it was all about bright colours and a bright possibility and a bright future. And it was all about telling people that you may find homosexuality disturbing, you may find it morally reprehensible, or you might just find it something that makes you uneasy, or you might find it to be something that in the privacy of your own bedroom you fantasize about, and you got to deny that. Whatever category you might be in and all the myriad of other categories, we're asking you that when you go into a voting booth to put your prejudice aside and just allow us to have the right to have a legal marriage, to have the right to love each other. So then you had farmers walking into voting booths, and I'm sorry for using the term farmers, I mean that affectionately, but you have people walking into voting booths who have a long history of a moral position on homosexuality, who are suddenly feeling uneasy because they don't want to be the person to stop someone else finding reciprocated love with another consenting adult, regardless of how they might morally feel about whatever they do in the privacy of their sex life. And suddenly their hand might be trembling, but they reach forward and they tick the box, yes, to give equality. And that's incredible. I think that's incredible, not because these people are prejudiced and not because they did something heroic, but because they saw the world from a point of view that was not necessarily theirs. And language became about love as opposed to sexuality, as opposed to morality. Now you take that and you go, that's a remarkable transition in a culture. That's something I think that we can be collectively proud of as a culture. Not because the people who were shouting for equality were heard, but because the people who were not being listened to in the privacy of their own conscience did the right thing. That's amazing. The same language, the same colours, the same representation is taken on board by the abortion referendum. And we call it repeal, but it's abortion. Now, regardless of how you feel about abortion, the same way as regardless of how you feel about sexuality, you all have your own private ideas of what's right and what's wrong. But in that, you're watching language. Now, at the start of repeal, I was contacted by several people to make some short films. I was even asked to make a couple of speeches. And my position entirely was in support of the right for a woman or a couple to legally be able to access abortion instead of having to travel to another country where we are depositing our problems, regardless of my personal feelings on abortion. So that's my position, and I'm willing to go down the line. And then suddenly I saw the language. And then I was contacted by some people who were saying that they were feeling uneasy, they were wondering, they were doubting their own conscience. So as an artist, which I think is the function of a filmmaker, you got to ask the questions that make people uncomfortable. And you got to ask yourself the questions that make you uncomfortable, the questions that make you confront your own prejudice and your own presumptions. So I posed a couple of basic questions. And I mean really basic questions, and I mean massively respectfully basic questions. And suddenly I went from being this hero character of the liberal left to being a scumbag. By people, some of whom I know, by people who were so rabidly right in their position that they aggressively shut down any dissent on any level.
Any discussion, any conversations.
Any conversation, any doubt, any idea that perhaps we're discussing the most profoundly fundamental issue of our time. not curious enough equality. Homosexuality has been there since time began.
Yeah, sure,
And that's just about the legal right to get married.
and it was sort of in Roman times it was embraced more, wasn't it? And then it was nearly like outcast by Catholic
Of course,
Church,
yeah.
kind of Christianity, and then
But again, that's a legal issue related to people having the right to marriage. But surely when we're discussing the idea of the most vulnerable form of life there is, a baby in a womb, surely that is a complex conversation that needs to be had, and needs to be had on a constant basis. Instead, you're savaged, you're accused of shaming women. And you go, hold on a second, I'm not trying to shame any woman. I've just said that I think that women and couples should be able to access abortion legally. But we got to question why this referendum is being held now. What is the agenda here? And who are the victims here? So suddenly now it's aggressive shutdown of any questioning whatsoever. And for me, that's happening across the board. It's happening in relation to race. We should be able to discuss race. Mm-hmm. We should be able to discuss the idea of immigration in a positive way without being accused of racism if you question the negative aspects of it. It's the same with democracy. Democracy is a brilliant idea. Equality is a brilliant idea. But the people who are at the front of these campaigns are not brilliant people. Some of them are corrupt beyond measure. And they're exploiting the engines that have been created by these social movements for their own benefit. So when we see the idea of this better future and the evidence being presented to us, the abortion referendum, the evidence presented to us was so completely one-sided on every level that we literally removed the child from the conversation. Now, in doing so, what you're trying to do is, understandably, because you have a campaign ahead of you, you're trying to remove the conscience of the person who may be in a position of complex doubt. And you're trying to tell them, give women the rights. It's a women's rights issue. And you go, okay, it is, yes, a women's rights issue. It's also a human rights issue. So then we have Colin McGorman becoming involved. We have Amnesty International involved. And you go, Amnesty International are getting behind a campaign for abortion? That doesn't make sense. Then it's progressing further and further. Then we have the government backing it to the hilt. Leah Varadkar, Simon Harris, Josepha Madigan. These are people who are destroying lives. And now they're champions, feminist heroes. And suddenly you're sitting there going, this is disturbing. I think it's so disturbing we need to have a conversation about it. Shut the fuck up! That's how quickly it's... And suddenly you're attacked on every level. Suddenly your whole history is erased. Suddenly you're the victim, according to yourself, for all the accusations. You're sitting there going, hold on a second. Have we not had a conversation about the idea of what it means to be alive? No way. So now we find ourselves in a situation where anything that is uncomfortable to us is a justification for destroying somebody else. So I have had Antifa publicly declare me right-wing, far-right. I'm sitting there going, what? I've done more than these people have ever dreamed of doing.
absolutely.
And these people are now in a situation where they look at you and in some little tweet, they decide that your character is going to be reassessed, recharacterized, redefined and destroyed. And they're going to be backed. And the people who know you are so afraid of opposing this new regime that they don't even speak up. So when we talk about evidence, what does evidence mean? What does language mean? When we start using the word compassion to describe the killing of kids, there's a problem. When we start using the word love and equality to describe probably the most painful decision a woman or a couple could ever make, there's a problem. When we have people in Dublin Castle screaming in celebration at the right to kill those kids, with Leah Varadkar standing at a window looking down like Nero, we have a problem. Evidence doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the brief stimulation of the heart to make you feel like you're doing the right thing. So even in the referendum, I believe that the people, the majority of people who voted yes for absolutely the right reasons. Voted yes for absolutely the most humanistic reasons, because they were manipulated and stimulated into thinking that was the case. But what mindset does it take to click off in your head the idea that there's a burgeoning life out there, protected, the most sacred there is? My newborn baby, I look at her, she came out of the womb and I looked at her and I went, 24 hours earlier, the law gave us the right to kill her. And we have people in Dublin Castle screaming in celebration of that. That's a problem. Not because these people are wrong. It's a problem because you're not allowed to have any conversation other than you are absolutely fundamentally on their side or you are fundamentally in the opposite.
I do get what you're saying about the idea of conversation. I think that's becoming a little bit of a tool in itself, is the idea of not being able to have a conversation that matters. Like if you mention, like, so I'm constantly on Facebook trying to educate people on the idea of immigration, saying away like so say there was a big fight in town the weekend, all right? White people and coloured and black people fighting. That's what it was. I remember in the 90s coming out discos, and it was bigger than that, and it was all white people, but there was no Facebook, right? So it's not in front of your face, and you see people like going on about, the old one, the same group of people. They're coming in here, they're taking air jobs, they're coming in, they're robbing air women, all of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, mate, no one's taking your job. Like the guy that is now doing your brain surgery because you fell off your motorbike scrambler going down the road or something like that is he emigrated to this country and now he's a brain surgeon. Did he take your job? Not really. And it's like, oh yeah, no, but he's different. And they keep knocking down all of these skittles until they get to the one like, yeah, him. And I'm like, I could find him in your society, in your class, and we probably have to lock down less skills. So the idea is that the Irish are the biggest immigrants. Like, we are, like, I'm trying to say to these guys, okay, right, here's a magic wand, and nobody comes into the country anymore, and we're out of Europe. Keep going down the wand, mate, and then I'll give you the consequences in a second, all right? So say they come as like a plague, like the Moses story or something like that. They make all the decisions, and then the plagues of these byproducts come. Number one being, we turn off the people coming into the country. Deadly, we have more money. Doesn't fix the problem. These boys are still robbing. This is pennies that you're talking about. You're trying to beat people in a lower position to you to make you feel bigger and make you feel like that you're doing something for your country. But the real situation is that now, let's get all the Irish back now. All them countries that we told can't come into our country decided, you know what, all the Irish, round them up, send them back to Ireland, send them home. Like, do they understand what happened? The island would sink. We would be overran in a day. People that actually can come here with a passport, fucking, say, 10 million of them decide to come back. What are we going to do? We can't even house the few million that are here. So before the people say this stuff in anger on Facebook and they're not going to do anything about it, cop on. It doesn't really make sense for you to say what you're saying. The idea of these referendums, what you're saying. Now, I agree with these referendums. I agree that, to me, you should have to have referendums for what was granted there. You know what I mean? It's even a decision between abortion and stuff like that is like regarding in between what people do in their own relationship and protecting and life and stuff like that and all this. There's many different. There's 20 ways to skin a cat in this. You know, there's the different situations, and we can't make a decision on a yes or no on the 20,000 situations that different people can go through with that position. So what we should do is we should grant each situation its own, I don't know, like what they say, God gives you the idea of choice, the idea to choose. That's what makes us humans. That's what that should be to me, because there's so many different situations that there's no way any campaign, any signs on lampposts are going to be able to hit all of them. We never will be. So what we should do is we should leave the choice with the people that are going to be going through these situations. That's my view on it. The same-sex marriage referendum, that shouldn't even have to happen. That should be just there. The reason why it's not here is because the Catholic Church came in here. They should not be telling anybody what to do with sex or with any morals or anything like that. You just go back into the bleeding closet and maybe in a few years just come out and say sorry and again. And that's what they should be doing. That's where I'm at with that. Now, people will be like, so you're bashing the Catholic Church? To me, the Catholic Church are a big group of lads together in a gang. It's nothing to do with spirituality. It's nothing to do with God anymore. What the referendums did do is they did what I think they were sent to do. And it wasn't to give Leo Varadkar the praise that he deserved. It was to divide the left. It was to attack the passionate people. Because let me tell you, when it comes to money and it comes to guys that are up, they don't give a fuck about all of this stuff. They don't care what's going on. They don't care about same-sex marriage or abortion or suicide or mental health or all of the other stuff that we can put on. When they're rich and they have their money, you do whatever the fuck you want, just don't touch my money. That's what them people are like. But on the left, we're different. On the left, we're more passionate. We're them people. And it was only a little while ago you told me about lefts and rights, because it's ups and downs and I'm trying to figure this stuff out myself. And you said, I said, am I a left or a right? And you were like, you're definitely a left, Paddy. On the last podcast that we had. So say we're on the left now. I turn around and say to you, I could beat you in this running race. If you're a left guy, there's a good chance you have that little bit of a fight in you, like, not today, motherfucker, and the two of us will race and we'll compete because it's in us. But you go to the guy on far on the right, billionaire, we'll have a race. He looks around and he tries to pay somebody to run that race for him so he can enjoy that little bit of gold that, I paid him and he beat you in the race, that means I own it. That's what we're dealing with, I think. Them referendums were not sent for equality or sent for any of the other things to actually grant the repeal or to grant same-sex marriage. They were sent to obliterate the left. They were sent to get the passionate people to fucking hate each other. And it worked. It worked. If you think of it, like, you've got parties, you've got people, so say Sinn Féin, people that would have been Republicans all their life, like this one thing comes down the thing and it divides everything and there's new parties popping up because of it, and it's all of this stuff happening. And Leo Varadkar is sitting up in these places and he's laughing his ass off to me. Leo Varadkar came out to the public, now not that he has to, but why did he come out if he wasn't going to come out as a minister, as a doctor, as being gay? Why did he come out 2 years before the referendum publicly as gay? If you're not going to do it back then, why do it now? You know, of a lot of quarrels with this man that, like, it bugs me to death to understand that he leads this country and that he's so separated, not even from society now, but he's so separated from the history of this country. He's like, now listen, I'm for immigration, I'm for bringing people into the country. I love meeting new nations, and mostly what you'll get is you'll get people turning up in this country motivated. That's what you do when you went somewhere, motivated for a new start, for a new go. And I love meeting these people. Leo Varadkar's blood obviously runs to India, you know, so his great grandfather is not part of the history of this country, you know what I mean? Now, Leo obviously he's an Irish citizen, but his passion doesn't go back to the times when our passion goes back to my stories from my grandfather would be of ancient Ireland. That would have made my passion, it planted the seed and it grew in me. Where there's no doubt that Leo Varadkar's grandfather and father would have told him stories of the rebellion in India, in the idea of fighting the English there, and Gandhi and all of these other stuff that comes through. So we're in a situation where we have a leader that's not only separated from kind of the history of the country, but separated from the classes in the country now. And there's a great word, and I heard you say it. Mythomania. Is that what it is? Mythomania. Am I saying it right?
Mythomania, yeah. Mythomaniacs.
Mythomaniacs. And when I heard this word and the description of it, I was like, this is it. This is literally what we're dealing with. And Leo is probably one of the biggest that we know. Leo, if you turn around and say to him in the doll, someone says to him in the doll, a valid point, smashes him with stuff, he blabbers bullshit. He says, like, yeah, well, we're not the worst homelessness in the world. Yeah, but there's also 6 million of us. That you're forgetting to say that. Well, our economy's grown and it's really, really good. Yeah, it's grown, but it's not developing. That means the rich are getting richer, Leo, and the poor are getting poorer. It doesn't mean that there's more hospitals. It doesn't mean there's more Garda stations, more policing. It means there's less, if anything, because you're taking the money away from it to make sure that the economy is growing. And people hear this, we're like, hold on, but Leo said that we've got like the top 5 economy in Europe, and I do understand the mix-up of this, and people are like, so how should you can't vote for shit, so you couldn't vote for Sinn Féin, or you couldn't vote for them other parties, so who else is going to lead the country? It's like, okay, so we're in a situation where the defence forces are getting paid less for 24 hours, alright, than prisoners are getting paid food-wise. The prisoners are eating better than the soldiers, right? The hospitals, not a hope, but I think it was the biggest ever in the history of the cases of healthcare. People waiting on trolleys. We've topped the poll again.
Who's our Minister for Defence?
Most
people don't know.
Robin will tell us now. He's probably...
No, I'll tell you who it is. And most people don't know.
He's definitely not an ex-soldier.
He's Leo Varadkar.
Is he the Minister for
He's
Defence?
our Minister for Defence.
As well. So he just gets... please don't tell me he just gets 2 wages for this.
But this is a guy who is so in love with Europe, he goes into a frenzy of delight at the idea of being a participant in Europe. Europe are now progressing the idea of a European army. Why do you think Irish soldiers have been treated so badly? Why do you think our Minister for Defence is allowing it to happen? But just go back a couple of, because you've mentioned some amazing points there. The first thing is, I preceded it by saying I'm going to say some stuff that's going to piss some people off. My belief is my belief. My belief changes constantly, and I think should. For example, immigration. I think the best thing that ever happened in this fucking country are foreigners coming into it. I lived in Ireland in the 80s. I know how bad it was.
And I try to say this to people as well, like, do you understand what the 80s should be like? Again.
But again, to clarify that the idea of, that's my personal opinion. I've been to Africa. I was in Nigeria twice. I met some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. I was treated so unbelievably well. I also met some hustlers, shysters, and fucking scumbags. Because guess what? They're in every culture. So my personal opinion is the best thing that's happened in this country is immigration and foreigners, okay? But if somebody, and most racism is fear-based anyway, like most prejudice is fear-based. But if somebody is accused of being a racist because they're afraid in general, and they're looking for something to focus their fear on, and that fear becomes a projection that feeds itself, they're now bringing in hate speech laws. Now, who defines what constitutes hate speech? We have the left. We're talking about the idea of the left. And again, these are the left that I love. These are people I love. Some of these people I still adore, even though they have fucking wanted me shot. And they are horrified by some of the questions I'm asking. And the questions I'm asking, I think, are necessary as an artist, but also as somebody who fundamentally believes that we are inherently good, that people in general are inherently decent and noble, including the opposite, including our enemy, including Leo Varadkar. So when we talk about the idea of race, the idea of the accusation of racism or the accusation of homophobia, I've been accused of being a homophobic, a racist, a racist, a misogynist, a long list goes on and on, a neo-Nazi, a alt-right. And you're going, where are these accusations coming from? So we now exist in a culture where you are what I accuse you of being. Back to evidence. I don't need any evidence to accuse you of being a racist. I don't need any evidence whatsoever. Why are you a racist, Paddy? Is it because you got this cultural thing that your grandfather told you stories about mythical Ireland? And Leo Varadkar, because he comes from India, doesn't share your history, therefore Leo Varadkar is not worthy of being leader of your country? And you're also a little bit of a homophobe. You don't want to say it, but he's a gay Indian. Now, how quickly does that become, those accusations become my prejudice, qualified, as long as I got a few people behind me? As opposed to going, we got a mixed race, gay, young leader. That should be the proudest thing imaginable. We should be, in Europe and the rest of the world, we should be walking around going, look how forward-thinking and progressive we are as a culture. But in actuality, our gay, young, mixed-race leader is a neoliberal fascist. And I mean fascist in the truest sense of the term, the literal sense of the term. People are using the word fascist left, right, and centre. Fascist is a government-controlled ideology used to oppress people. The actual fascist here is the leader of Fine Gael and its party. Apart from its own roots, you're talking about history.
That's what I was going to say to you. The roots of this goes back
Blue
to...
shirt, actual fascism.
Absolutely fascism.
And literally verifiable fascism, as opposed to some emotive reaction. But when we talk about the idea of him as a leader, I don't have a problem with him going back to India. I don't have a problem with him being gay. In fact, they're probably the two least interesting aspects of him.
They're probably the things that I said at the start. Do you know what? This might not be that bad.
I know, exactly. These are the things that we want to embrace.
If we had seen another just Fina fucking head going in and it was like, oh, here we go again. But when actually at that time I was like, do you know what? Maybe.
But this is the thing. We should be able to have that conversation. I want to be able to, like you talked about you and I being so, of the left, whatever that phrase means these days, but we're going to have a race. You're going to challenge me to a race. So we're going to have a race. And immediately, the two of us, our entire history is going to come into play in our heads to go, how do I usurp this motherfucker? But how do I do it with love? How do the two of us get to the end of this exhausted, sweating and going, you Instead, Now it's, you want to race me because you're an athlete? You're shaming me because I don't have the physical capacity you have? Who the fuck do you think you are? Now, how quickly did something that was noble and exciting and competitive in the best sense of the term become an accusation against you of body shaming? Because it suits my agenda. Because I don't have the capacity to be who you are. Therefore, I need to find a way of being a victim, a professional victim that can attack you. That's our mentality across the board. So when we talk about the idea of abortion, my personal feelings on abortion are my personal feelings on abortion and are frankly irrelevant to the larger issue of the legality of abortion. But when I'm attacked personally for asking questions related to the idea of what it means to engage in the sanctity of life and death, that becomes a much more problematic idea, because the very people that I'm aligned with, when you and I want to have a race, they want to break my legs. And they're happy to break my legs and feel justified in breaking my legs. So when we talk about the idea of hate speech as a law, what are they doing? Censorship has historically always been a weapon of the right. Now there's a frenzy from the left to embrace censorship. We have people queuing up outside the door to protest against hate. They're protesting against hate from some people who literally have no power whatsoever. I won't name their names because there's no point in it. But these are people who are now presented as hate figures. And they seem to be broken, occasionally confused, sometimes quite smart people who have a very specific perception of what's happening to our culture. Now they've been held up as the poster children for everything that's wrong with our culture. And nobody sees the irony that this is happening outside the Dáil, where the actual damage has been done on a daily basis. So then you have one protesting group here, you have a counter-protesting group here. The two of them are involved in this standoff. Everybody is screaming, everybody is feeling heroic, everybody is feeling like they're doing something, and in actuality they're having no effect whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But the consequence of it is that the people on the left, many of whom should know much better, are now petitioning the government to implement hate speech laws. The very thing the government was dreaming of being able to do. And the people who are asking for censorship are not the right, but the left. Now that's a major problem, because what happens when we define the idea of what constitutes hate and give the power to the government to implement those laws? What happens when you, Paddy, say to me, I challenge you to a race, and I go, he's body shaming me? What happens when my prejudice and my fear of you and my fear of my own inability is empowered by people who want to hurt you? That's how fast it'll happen. And it's the left who are queuing up for that.
I feel like society is, to me, I would say, there's certain people in society that will always do the right thing, and they will always be ethically kind of on the they're not on the fence, and they're not trying to please anybody. They're just trying to do the right thing. I would consider myself as one of them, and I think society is trying to get rid of them people, in a way. You know,
it is.
And if they get rid of them people, all of a sudden it's a lot easier to put the left into frenzy, where you just got to throw something in between them. I don't know, it's like the ducks in the park. If you throw a big piece of bread in between them, they all go towards it, and they're murdering each other. And if I wanted to walk by them, I would just walk that way. And it's so easy to do this with passionate people. That's what I've been noticing. All you got to do is pick up something that you decide you want to do, like the water charges, Brexit. Just throw a biscuit in there, and the left will go crazy. They will be like distracted by all this maniac. He's saying this, they're saying that, they're fighting amongst themselves. But as I said, the right will always be like, is the money okay? Yeah. Well then, fuck everything else, as long as they don't touch my money.
And curiously enough, there's kind of a greater honesty in that. Because they know they're lying. Yeah. They're not convincing themselves in this headspin trick that they're being somehow noble. And it's not that I'm attracted to the right. I think the right is a comic book scenario. But also the idea of left and right is so diffused anyway, we don't know what it is anymore. Yeah. We started this idea about the idea of,
far left, mid right, like where are we?
Truth and evidence. What does truth and evidence mean anymore? And I think that the closer we get to a scenario where we refuse to speak with each other and refuse to engage with each other, and then have a government implement laws to make sure that separation is forever, we got a major problem. Yeah. I want to talk to people who have an opposite position to me. Again, back to repeal, and I only mention it because it's, and as I said, I don't mean to offend anybody, but in the process of going from 100% being behind it to going, this is something extraordinary happening in our culture. I listened to every podcast. I read every story from every woman and every couple, some of which were absolutely devastating. Really devastating. And then you're watching it and you're going, those stories are now being brought out again. So we have Simon Harris our Minister for Health, Simon Harris, giving an interview the other day saying, how dare you protest outside the Rotunda Hospital? That wasn't a protest, it was a vigil. Now, in terms of the Catholic Church, I fucking hate the Catholic Church. I was an altar boy.
No, you didn't.
I know firsthand the kind of lascivious motherfuckers who were controlling it. That's my personal opinion. But also, I know many, many really beautiful people who subscribe to the Catholic faith. Should I demonize them? Should I destroy them? But it's okay to do that. We can't discuss any other religion in the negative, but we can absolutely shit all over Catholic faith. Now, I'm opposed to the Catholic faith, and yet I think it's imperative that the people who believe in that faith should have their voice heard. And I should have the courtesy and the decency and the humanity and the curiosity to engage with them, because perhaps they might teach me something, as opposed to me shutting them down and gleefully insisting that they're all scum. And this is what we're doing across the board. So back to the idea of repeal, that idea where you go, those people outside that building, outside the Rotunda Hospital, were holding a vigil. If anybody looks at the video footage, some of them are on their knees and they're all completely silent. Simon Harris recharacterizes them as aggressive, intimidation-led people who are saying, did you have an abortion? Are hurting people and their partners. How dare you, how dare you? And we're listening to this, and the whole response is Simon Harris is now back to being a feminist hero.
And this is if this is what does my head in, this is what the social media, the danger, as he said, and it is, you're dead right. Like my young fella is not on social media, but he's always into the iPads and computers and stuff like that. But he's a clever young fella. He's so clever. He teaches me things now where he's like, no, that actually be this way and that way, and I'm like listening to him. So what you're saying is, might as well be looking at books. But people like Simon Harris have the ability with social media to be able to do something bad one week and then turn this around in a week like this. And the thing is, and they're pumping millions into it. They have a lot. They've people that are way smarter than us in how to market, how to put people out there in a good form, how to build it up, how to put the teasers out, how to do all of this kind of stuff. And that's what they do. And these guys are putting millions into it.
Millions. It was just released yesterday. In 1 year, Fine Gael has spent $5 million on advisors. Not on their propaganda machine, on advisors. Now imagine you and I had $5 million between the two of us on advisors. And yet they still fuck it up. They're still that incompetent, they still fuck it up. And then you go, is it a fuck up? Steph and Robin were talking about it earlier. Or is it a case of all of these decisions, all of these off-the-hand comments that are made? Like, again, the mythomaniac, the idea of that idiot TD deciding, who I won't mention his name because I don't want to give him any power, but him deciding to attack Glenn Hansard and Cillian Murphy for discussing, even having the temerity to discuss homelessness. But you're looking at that and you're going, who are these people? And you go, he didn't make that decision casually.
No.
That was authorised at a committee level probably weeks ago. So even their fumbling, apparent idiocy is smoke and mirrors distraction. And you look at someone like Simon Harris. Simon Harris just yesterday, stated how proud he is of his record as Minister for Health. That's like a guard in Dachau saying how proud he is of the numbers that he's made. He's kept the numbers down. You're going, there's a mentality. And then you're going, it doesn't matter whether he believes it or not. All that matters is that he says it. And there are people out there who will go, yeah, I think Simon has done a good job. There was a hashtag during repeal, I snogged Simon, was the hashtag. And women were taking photographs of themselves kissing Simon Harris. And as they were doing that, literally as they were doing that, there were women in hospices dying of cancer as a result of the policies implemented by Mary Harney and protected by Simon Harris. And he's still a feminist hero.
And not one mistake with that.
And nobody's questioning it.
2 mistakes with that.
Nobody has asked. Again, it's that thing where you go, some things are right, but some things need to be questioned to find out how right they are. And we no longer exist in a culture where questioning is a reason for celebration, a reason for interrogation, a reason for pause, a reason to maybe even reassess your position. I love the idea of you and me sitting down over a couple of whiskies and having massive rows about positions that we're not necessarily even that clear on. But what happens when I say, I'm just going for a piss, and I call somebody and I say, look, I have a recording here. Listen to what Paddy said. And I take that recording out of context. I precede it with a series of statements describing events and actions that you perhaps never even did, but they suit my agenda. And then that small section is released to the media. And your entire reputation is destroyed in a heartbeat. Because I have all the power of hate speech laws on my side.
It is the way this is what we were only talking about this last week, and this is something I'm starting to notice as well. And if I was to start talking about this, people are going to be like you're just a weirdo, like you need to relax. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to keep up with the weapons that are coming your way, and they're not always guns and bullets, and you know what I mean. It's, you got to watch what the weapons are. The new weapon is, right, and I've seen people, and I'm shocked. I've seen people, good people, being caught with it, and I'm like, how did you get caught with that? And they're like, really? So I would help with charities, many different charities, right? And now, to me, what's happening is these charities. So there's guys that are mates of mates and mates are the CEOs and the running of these charities, and are making millions out of this. But not only are they making money, all right? If you say you're running a homeless charity, there is no way you should get where people go, do you know what, you do so much for homeless, I adore what you do, fair play to you, and 130 grand a year. You don't get both of them. You get one or the other, and that's the way it should work, right? Now, last night I was able to look at a charity. The ad came on the television and I knew it was corrupt. Do you know why? Because the ad was on the telly. We used to be giving money to Trocrit. It used to be like, you can give this money to Trocrit and stuff like that and all. And then years ago, like, this is not new. Do you know that Trocrit, all that money doesn't go to them kids? I remember that coming out and I'd be like, what? I'd be sick in my house saving the Trocrit box, not going near that. And we'd be broke as fuck, you know what I mean? Like, if there's money in the Trocrit box, you wouldn't touch it because, like, it's unholy. You know, when you were a kid. So now we're in a situation where, like, the charities on the telly are for homelessness. All of the charities. I'm looking at a charity. If you want, right, you can go online and you can Google. They have to release the yearly statements in charities. And yesterday I was going through one, and my God, is it funny? All right. Not only are they doing well, they're getting better and better. They've employed more people. They've increased wages. So while the situation's getting worse, the business is getting bigger. The charity is getting bigger. It's getting better. None of it on it had building houses. I could not find a charity that literally gets money and builds houses from it. So what the fuck are the charities for? Are the charities literally abating? Are they now places that people can hide behind, make a lot of money, get pushed into positions, hide in like the second tier of a charity in some building down? And then I'm looking at the idea of as much money they spend on buildings. So some of these charities, obviously, it'll have assets and it'll have rent and it'll have things like that. And then I'm checking some of the buildings. Some of the buildings are state-owned. The government are giving millions to these charities looking like absolute heroes. They're like, don't worry, we get them 5 million, we get them 10 million for homeless. We're sorting out homelessness. No, they're not. These charities are now becoming bank accounts for the government to be able to put money in. But not only that, they look great as well. We are trying to fix it. We're trying to, look at us. We give all this money to it, sure. But when you look into the charities, not one of these charities are moving in a way that they're actually trying to stop it and trying to dam it. It's like the dam is broke and they are redirecting the flow of water that's coming through the hole. They're not trying to do it. The money's being wasted on redirecting is pumping the water back into the dam, and then the water just comes back out and we'll pump it back in and we'll spend all the money pumping the water back in. And that's literally what's happening. I can't find charities that are building houses. If we put all of these charities together, and there's 50, 60 of them now, they're growing, there's more and more of them. Will all of these charities sit around a table, all of the homeless charities, every single one of them, they all sit around, put all of their egos to the side, all of their fucking, I don't know, the hate for each other, because there's always this little, I mean, you're not like us, and we're not. If it's trying to solve homelessness, sit down together and make one charity. make one state charity, one CEO, doesn't get a mad wage out of it. The person that needs to do the job, and they get someone overlooking them, so there's a regulator then that regulates that. So we have one homeless charity. Let's do that. Then we have a charity. It's simple. What happened is that it got out of hand, and now we're in a situation where we're banging all of these monies into all of these different charities to try and block the dam, but nobody's building houses. If anything, it's going the other way. Dublin City County Council yesterday let out a statement about they're going to sell, like, it looks like Monopoly, 100 million on sales. Did you see what they're doing? They're selling, like, the areas that they're selling stadiums. They're selling 100 million. Like, that means, say when Conor fought Mayweather, he got 100 million for that. Conor could have came back and bought half of Dublin with 100 million with football stadiums alone. We're not talking about, like, building developments here. Why are they selling that land? And why aren't they, as I said, with these charities linking up with the councils and saying, you know what we should do? We should link up with you. We've got loads of land and a land bank here that we could just give to the charity, and the charity builds loads of houses out of money that the people put into the charity. Hey! Is that rocket science?
But again, do you think his statement was accidental? Do you think it was off the cuff, or do you think it was meticulously planned? Remember we talked the last time about the idea of the normalisation of obscenity.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing across the board.
Yeah.
And one of the things is, if you look at the idea of communal living, which is making a big splash right now, communal living is the ideal scenario for governments and banks, which are one and the same.
Yes.
And the idea of communal living is that your living space is less than the size of a prisoner's cell, but you share a kitchen and you share a bathroom. And it's been sold to us as a lovely idea. Even the word communal, it sounds like you can be part of a community. Now, they're talking initially about $1,300 a month to start with. Now, you look at that idea, because in other cultures, this is completely normal as well, the idea of the normalization of obscenity, but the idea of renting an apartment, the idea of home ownership, back to our history, the idea of owning a piece of land is something that's in our blood, but it's something they want cut from our blood.
I built that field, boy.
Yeah, exactly.
I built that field with bare hands.
Yeah. That's
it.
it.
Blood it is, Robin. The bull.
The bull. Now, you look at that idea going, okay, what is the best case scenario for a bank who are, again, in complete cahoots with the government? It's absurd to suggest that they're separate from each other. But a bank, what's the best case scenario for a bank? If you have 10,000 people homeless, and there's a lot more than that, but we say that's the figure, 10,000 people homeless, and you have people lying in blankets, sleeping bags on the street, and you're in a position where you can't pay your mortgage and you can't feed your children at the same time. But you look at that person in that sleeping bag across the road from you, and you see people stepping over that person, and you see no structures put in place to help that person. And you look at your child, and you look at the request from the bank, and you allow your child to go hungry, and you allow your fridge to be empty to pay that monthly fee. The greatest advertisement in the world for a bank is a homeless person. Yeah. It's like billboards all over the city. It's like a $100 million campaign that doesn't cost them a cent. Mm. So when you introduce the idea of communal living and the idea that you're going to rent something, or if you're going to buy something, your children are going to inherit the debt and your grandchildren are going to carry on the debt. So instead of a 21-year loan, we'll give you a 125-year loan. And in that small space, your children will continue to live with you. And when you die, they pick up the debt and they continue to pay it, and their children continue to pay it. That's the ideal scenario. And when we look at the idea, again, back to this idea of the normalization of obscenity. Well, again, I don't mean this crudely, but when we talk about the horror of people protesting outside the rotunda, even though it's a vigil, it's not even a protest, it's a silent vigil. And we talk about people coming outside the door, two factions, two groups, the left and the right, the far left and the far right, and all these passionate, very good people, by the way, very, very good people, but passionately immersed in this toxic creation that makes everybody feel like they're doing something. When you had 11 people, there were 10, but one of them was a child and the baby, very much wanted child in the belly. You had 11 people murdered in Carrick Mines. And again, we're talking about austerity as murder here, as a weapon of murder. You have 11 people murdered in Carrick Mines, and those people have no effect on our culture whatsoever. The single biggest tragedy since Stardust. And nobody gives a fuck. Nobody. Now, as a result of the deaths that happened there, the extended deaths are somewhere into the region of 27. People who've died of suicide, people who've died of heartbreak, people who've died of poverty since. They were taken off that area and put in a concrete car park. Where was the protest for them? Where was the outrage? Where was the sickened sense of watching somebody be dehumanized to such a degree that the consequence is ongoing, death after death, tragedy after tragedy? We don't want to engage with that. Instead, we want to engage with things that make us feel like we're doing something.
Yeah.
So part of the attraction of a homeless business, and it is a business, part of the attraction of that whole homeless business is that it makes people feel, back to advertising billboards, it makes people feel like something is happening. But we got the CEOs of these companies earning money that is incomprehensible for a job so badly done that the homeless figures keep on increasing and their annual salary keeps on increasing. Now, there's other sides to it. I don't mean to get personal here or anything, but she's just such a remarkable woman that I want to talk about the difference between charity as an act of profound change and real compassion. Debbie Deegan, I've been working with a woman called Debbie Deegan. She's doing a TED Talk next week in London. Our TED Talk is a big, big deal. It's seen by millions around the world. But she created a charity called From Russia with Love. Now, what happened was she experienced firsthand, just very quickly, because she'll tell it in a far more interesting way, but she experienced firsthand the horror of witnessing the orphanages in Russia after the collapse. And she is a woman from Clontarf, north side Dublin. She's not particularly affluent. She's not particularly anything. She's literally would describe herself as being a stereotypical housewife. And she had no idea what to do, but was obsessed with trying to do something, was driven to try to do something. So she started a coffee morning. That was the best she could come up with. Put a bit of whiskey in the glasses and earned, I think, 10 grand. And that 10 grand was enough to start this revolution. And this is 21 years ago. Still doing it today. Now, the consequence of that is that she has literally saved the lives of tens of thousands of orphans and utterly transformed their lives, not just saved them and forgotten them, brought them through the whole process into adulthood. To have spent several months in her company listening to this and trying to refine it with her and help her with it and to be so humbled by it. Now, I'm not being indiscreet here. I hope I'm not being indiscreet here, but her salary as CEO of that company is significantly less than our minimum wage. And this is a woman who's saving and transforming lives. The consequence of her actions are not just evidence-based, profoundly beneficial to all those people, but she's a woman in our culture that will be largely forgotten. At the same year that we're giving awards to women for Together for Yes and repeal campaigns as heroes, this woman is over in Moscow, been given the highest civic award to a Westerner that anybody can achieve directly from Vladimir Putin. And that's the difference between our culture and the idea of what we're willing to engage with. Mythomania again, the idea of evidence again, the idea of what we're willing to accept, the idea of the normalization of obscenity. We are willing to accept homeless people as long as we're not those people. We are willing to allow people to make vast sums of money and profit off homeless people as long as we're not those people. We are willing to allow our children to go hungry as long as we're not those people. Now you look at within that context how powerful a symbol homeless people are to those in power. Why would you want to fix that?
No, and the thing about it, Terry, to me is that when we talk about this situation, right, people forget. They look at places like Russia, they look at England, they look at all these things. We are in a position on this island is what it is, of 6 million people. In New York, there's a few million people in a few blocks. We are in like, as you said, Leo Varadkar shamed his whole family's name for the rest of time, okay? Where he was in a situation where he could have became one of the best leaders in the world. He is young. He is he's an immigrant in a way, you know what I mean? he's a gay man. He's like, all of these things that would have made him so like so new age. If he had have been a good leader, if he had have dropped homelessness and did all the things that he was supposed to do, go in straight away and lower all of the wages all the way down to what they're supposed to be for ministers, and all of the pensions and all of the stuff that these people are doing so much better than society. You're not doing one bit better. These are doing 10 times better.
He could have been one of the greatest leaders in the history of the world. Not just our country, in the history of the world.
history of the world.
That's literally what was possible for him.
That's what was possible for him.
Yeah.
And he screwed that over to keep the money in the 10%, in that little percent up there in the corner, where like there's much more than money. The money in this country is, when you talk about north and south and all of it together, we live on an island that is the closest city to Boston with Dublin, you know. We go over the other side and we're in America. When England leave through Brexit, I said this a bit, all the other guys, they're coming in here taking their jobs. Fucking EU should fuck off as well. They don't understand. Do they understand if we weren't an EU country at the moment, alright, a bomb would have went off in London somewhere and it would have been blamed on the IRA, and the IRA are back and they would, right, send the troops to Ireland, you gotta get these boys, and they would have been in Dublin and Louth and Galway, and the Brits would have been back on this land, boots on the field. They don't give a fuck. The Garda Commissioner is former RUC, so it doesn't take them that long to realise what's actually going on. They're in the veins of all their policing, all of the guard, they could literally take this country back like that, and that's just the way. That's a fact.
Okay, well, it's
if we didn't have Europe.
No, well, it's brilliant that you brought it up, because let's discuss our Garda Commissioner.
Oh Jesus! Don't let me start about this, lad.
No, but the first week of the Garda Commissioner's appointment, around the corner from me, there was a bunch of wonderful young crusties who had taken over a house that had been derelict for years. I pass by it every day. Derelict for years. They took it over as a protest against homelessness. And in the first week of our police commissioner's job, a unmarked ex-English police vehicle with guys in balaclavas drove down from the north, and facilitated by Garda Síochána, kicked in the front door, beat the shit out of multiple young people, sent someone into the hospital, got back in that car, again protected by the Gardaí, in balaclavas, and drove right back up to the north.
Sounds very close to collusion that we've been.
Collusion. He authorised that in his first week. Now, what's happening on the 17th of January? We are having a commemorative ceremony for the Royal Irish Constabulary.
The Black and Tans.
People who murdered and raped
on
behalf of the English Empire, destroyed our culture. We're holding up a ceremony in honour of those people. And this is back to the idea of evidence and the idea of what does meaning have anymore. We have a leader who's facilitating the celebration of our greatest enemy. Now, our greatest enemy is not England.
No.
I lived in England. I was treated so remarkably well by the English, and I couldn't believe it, because at the time there was a bombing campaign across London. I was thinking, how are these people treating me so well? All working class, all remarkable people.
We say this all the time on the podcast, don't we? We are very alike.
Yeah.
Working class Irish and working class English have more in common than these other fuckers.
Well, let me just read you this, because I thought this was amazing, considering we won't go into what's happening in Iran, because it's another culture. But just this idea of, where is it here now? I thought it was an extraordinary quote. It's from an Iranian author. Her name is Marjan Satrapi. She said, "The world is not divided between East and West. You are American, I am Iranian. We don't know each other, but we talk and we understand each other perfectly. The difference between you and your government is much bigger than the difference between you and me. And the difference between me and my government is much bigger than the difference between me and you. It's our governments that are very much the same." And I thought that was incredible.
That was brilliant.
Because that idea of going, what connects us is far greater than what divides us. And the fact that we're falling into that trap, as you said, and it is a trap, you even described it earlier, I think before we started, that the idea that you now encounter people who are setting traps for you.
Of course.
Yeah,
They're setting traps for us all.
Yeah, no, but particularly for you, because now you're in a position where you go from being an MMA fighter who's attractive and warm and open and a lot of fun and all those qualities, to now becoming increasingly a dangerous man. So people are going to have two responses to you in that position. They're either going to take away the traps to protect you and tell you in advance, or they're going to lay traps everywhere. And while they're pretending to tell you about the trap they're laying for you here, they're laying 6 more up here and telling you come this way.
It's like fighting.
Yeah.
And that's what people say to me, how do you benefit from fighting? Because I've been set up and smashed with a right hand before. You know what I'm saying? And you get the ability with fighting to know that there's 4 or 5 setups happening at the same time. And not only that, then I learn how to flirt with them setups. I learn how to walk around the trap and sniff the trap. And not only that, then I can use that trap against you.
Brilliant.
You know?
It's chess.
So
it's physical chess.
What we have here.
Yeah.
Like, I heard someone saying the other day that it's not social media anymore. Take the media out of the way. Or take the social out of the way. It's media. It's all media. It was on a podcast. There was a girl that was a journalist for the BBC, and she was talking about Jill Dando and talking about all of this stuff, and she left journalism because she said it was so corrupt. It was a population corrupt. Like everyone, who's the most popular? You know what I mean? Now she said there's some amazing journalists out there, and there is, and I hate to bash on. I'm not like that. I don't want to bash on groups, but there's people in groups, and to me, if you're not standing against the people in your groups, I'm questioning you. You know, you have to be people. You have to protect your communities, and the people need to stand against the people in their communities.
But also, you got to question within your own community as well. It's back to what we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm a filmmaker. As a filmmaker, I have a passionate belief in telling stories from people we don't normally hear stories from. I have a passionate need to give voice to the voiceless. But we're having in Ireland at the moment, we're having this huge movement toward what's called Waking the Feminists. And just like democracy being a brilliant idea, feminism is a sublime idea. Feminism is one of the great ideas there is, because feminism at its heart is humanism. And it's about removing all the ugliness that controlling society has done on behalf of men to disempower women. Yeah. Sickening things. But what's happening with this Waking the Feminist movement? It's a lie. The women who are taking power in this context are not women who have been disenfranchised. They're not women with socioeconomic deprivation. They're not women who are actual victims. They are professional victims who are playing a certain card, a gender card. Now you look at that, and we were talking about the film earlier. We just made a film. And the film was made for next to nothing. Literally next to nothing. And I've made 2 films beforehand. One of them is a film called Charlie Casanova. It's one of the most hated films ever made, but we made it. And the film ended up winning Galway. Now that's an extraordinary journey for a bunch of people who've never made anything before. Second film is a film called Patrick's Day.
What a film. I've seen it over Christmas. If you haven't seen Patrick's Day, me brain, what happened? What did you do to me?
But again, even with Patrick's Day, like Patrick's Day is a film that screened all around the world, won awards all around the world, all those types of things. And the consequence of it is that despite all those awards and despite it being one of the most celebrated films of that year and one of the biggest successes for the film board, I'm now completely blacklisted by the film board. And the reason I'm blacklisted is because I've had the temerity to ask questions about the actual equality that they claim to be talking about. Because it's not equality.
No, it's not.
It's inequality.
Yeah.
And it's an inequality that's been driven, again, under the guise of equality. So I have 3 daughters. If I thought for a second that my daughters would use their genitals as a justification for progress or getting ahead or getting what they want, I'd go, is that not what prostitution used to mean? I'd be devastated, because I would want them to get ahead based on hard work and the idea of being visionary. Now I got 2 sons as well. My son is 24. My daughter is 19. I obviously adore them. But my son busts his hole every single day trying to make stuff. He's recently got a camera. He's extraordinary, incredibly dedicated. And he's self-taught on all these types of things. So he's doing a lot of different work for a lot of different people. One of your friends actually in MMA, he's doing stuff for him at the moment. Kiefer Crosby.
Yeah. Kiefer's a good man as well.
So he's doing all these things, and he is doing them himself, and then he's self-taught, and then he has an editing software package that he downloaded for free, and he'll edit until 5:30 in the morning, and then he'd deliver it, and then he'd collapse for an hour and then continue again. Nobody has handed him anything. He's built it all himself. He's done remarkable work. It's incredible to watch it. My daughter, who's 19, wants everything handed to her. Her favorite word is patriarchy. All she gives a fuck about is being a professional victim and justifying her prejudice against the white man, straight white male who's stopping her getting ahead. Won't do fuck all to get what she wants. He's given her multiple opportunities and she's fucked them up or turned them down or has been too busy. And yet, now the film board as it stands has created this new thing called Ex-Pollinator, it's called. It's an event that they created over a series of weekends where 150 women, initially it was 250 they were trying to attract, but they selected 150 women to become the voice of the next generation of Irish cinema. No men allowed, 150 women. Now, there were men allowed on stage who have the experience to be able to become mentors to these women in the brief weekends that were allocated, but these are all exclusively women. There have been multiple campaigns set up by the Irish Film Board, funded by the taxpayer, to benefit these women, most of whom are middle to upper class, most of whom's daddy's going to pay for their crashed car. Most of them haven't fucking done anything to get what they want. My daughter would be accepted and embraced and celebrated in this new regime, and my son will be told to go fuck himself by virtue of their gender. Now, when we talk about equality and we talk about the idea, okay, what does Waking the Feminist mean? And as I said, this comes from somebody who's a profound believer in feminism. And the Waking the Feminist movement came as a result of the 2016 program for the National Theatre, the Abbey Theatre. A program that left women out, and it was sickening and wrong, and the righteous response was the creation of Waking the Feminists. It was a hashtag, and someone asked, why is there no women represented in this? This is the centenary of 1916. There fucking should be women represented. There should be, because the amazing warriors who were part of it.
Countess Markovich, they were when the lads were in prison, they were the ones who kept the war going.
My daughter, her name is Connie. She's named after Countess Markovich. That's how much I believe in feminism. Countess Markovich would be sickened by this.
Absolutely.
Put on your dress and put a gun underneath. It was her idea. Yeah. But you're looking at this and you're going, okay, what are we doing here? What we're doing is we're creating yet again another control mechanism for people who are power grabbing, just like you talk about the homelessness and the people who are controlling the charities. So now we have a situation where women who are on the outside, women from Tala, like what difference has Waking the Feminists done for the women in Tala? What difference has it done for women in direct provision? What difference has it made for the women who came to this country and who are the immigrants? What difference has it made for any of these women? There's the occasional token one held up, but in general, it's just like RT, just like these environments. Absolutely. You can go fuck yourself.
It's the idea it's the idea of it being seen, it's the perception.
But it's the corruption of an idea. Back to evidence again. It's wearing the badge. Again, we were talking about it earlier, but it's like the idea of, Jimmy Savile opening a children's hospital. Yeah. You're going, what's happening here? We've just normalised obscenity yet again. And I watched this, and I watched it on a completely evidence-based. So, for example, the Irish Film Board has been 95% women for many, many years. Screen Ireland, which is the educational wing of the Irish Film Board, has been exclusively women for many, many years. A guy who's been running it recently. But you look at that and you go, okay, so who, of 95% women for well over a decade or two, who has been stopping women getting ahead? What man is standing over a woman's shoulder when she sits down and tries to write a screenplay, taps her on the shoulder and says, don't fucking start writing? What producer has ever held up a script and went, Jesus Christ, that was brilliant, looked at the name on the front of the cover and says, but it's a pity it was written by a woman, and dumps it in the bin? It's a fucking lie. Because there's so many different areas of our society where women are badly treated, where women need our protection, where women need us to collectively get together and protect them. Victims, actual victims, not professional victims. So it's back to that idea when we talked about the people who were left and right outside the Dáil and yet completely ignoring the Carrickmines tragedy. When our government shut down all the rape crisis centres, where were all these feminists then? Where was all this rage then? The rage is self-fulfilling prophecy that is only to grab the power, to get what you want. As opposed to, and this is back to the idea of evidence and back to the idea of language. I know amazing women, amazing women, incredible artists who, in private, have spoken to me at their horror of the depiction of women within the Waking the Feminist idea. Yeah. No, and yet will not, because they're completely understandably afraid, will not publicly state anything even close to that. In fact, some of them will publicly defend it, even though they know it's a complete fallacy. Now, again, you're going, what happens to us as a culture when we take ideas like feminism, ideas like equality, ideas like human rights? Again, back to the idea of abortion. It was a human rights issue. Is there any time in history when the word human rights was required for the removal of the human? And this is back to the idea of language. What does language mean? And language is a constantly unfolding, fluctuating beauty. But it's also something that allows us to understand what we're talking about. And the moment we allow some controlling group, whatever their agenda might be, to redefine language, we are in for a serious problem, because we will no longer have any idea what truth is. And we will no longer care what evidence is. All we will care about is our agenda down the middle, and how fast can we get what we want, regardless of who gets hurt in the process.
And that agenda down the middle, I think, the people that are going down the middle, the more ruthless you are, the more capability you have of showing ruthless, of not only that but fucking your own people up, you will get there faster. In the true struggle for equality between genders and between feminism, I think equality was lost. And I'll tell you a few quotes why, and especially when you're saying language and words and all of this stuff that mixes up. I get asked a lot here, right, in the club, that do you run female only classes? And I say, no. Why? Because I believe in equality. But I very, very, very rarely get a lad texting me saying, do you run male only classes? And even in myself, it would scare me, because it would be weird to hear him saying that. But why is he saying that? Why does he not, you know? And then if I was to advertise male only classes, watch the comments. You will see it. If I was to email, or if I was to mail female only classes, they do well. They do really, really well. And we just have all females out there. Now, I don't understand the idea of me separating a situation so all females can be there and every man is excluded. The same way I don't feel that it's okay to put all men in a situation and exclude all females. But I know for a fact, if I put that up in society, if I put that out there, my business would be affected. I would be affected personally. I would be slated. He hates women, or they wouldn't say he hates men.
Well, this is the thing, is I've just seen your class upstairs, and it's incredible. The sense in the room is amazing. But I also do understand why some women would want female-only classes, because they're afraid, or because they may have been attacked, or because this is the problem. There are some fucking scum men out there,
yeah.
Real scum, and they need to be literally stopped.
Now, saying that, I just want to stop you on that. There is some fucking scum women out there as well.
I was just going to say that.
Right? And I just want to say to you, there's a situation I heard during the week where somebody was underage. The person didn't know they were underage. The girl pursued the guy, got whatever she needed, had pictures, had videos, and then said, I want 10 grand. And it wasn't the first person. There was loads of them. That was like, what is that kind of situation that's going on in society now? I have 2 sons. It petrifies me that somebody could turn around and say, I'm literally just going to say that you attacked me if you don't give me 10 grand. And people go, no, that doesn't happen. It absolutely, I'm putting my hand on my heart to tell you, it does happen, and it is happening out there. So what happens there?
Again, I couldn't agree more. There's 2 things here, and it's part of a major problem when it comes to evidence again, which seems to be a theme that's coming up over and over. We had this idea here. There was a young artist, a lovely artist, who started a campaign, and the campaign was, I believe you before you open your mouth. And it was done for all the noble, right reasons. And immediately I thought, that's a really dangerous precedent. I believe you before you open your mouth. Now again, let's be clear here. Statistics have proven, and human beings being what they are, have proven that very often the actual victims, and I mean real victims, not victimhood, but actual victims, are so scarred by what has happened, they are incapable of coming forward. Or when they do come forward, they are treated with such disdain or such disbelief that it's like being attacked a second time. That's horrific, beyond comprehension. The insistence that that is the only scenario there is, and will always be the only scenario there is a total fallacy. Because there are also, as you say, some people who happen to be women who are fucking scum, opportunistic scum, who will lie, and not even forget about scum. I'll pull back scum. There are some people who are broken or damaged.
Yes.
And feel that they have the right in their own mind, justified, they have the right to attack and savage somebody because they didn't give them quite what they wanted, because they didn't have the experience that they thought they had had. And again, it's back to this. Like, there are people who might watch this video now. Now, there are people, broadsheet trolls, all these kind of people who fucking hate you and me already, or maybe they like you and they just fucking hate
Robin.
me.
You two hiding over there.
Yeah, Robin hiding in the background. But,
Me and you getting fucking egged and Robin getting bleeding. Walk through the crowd.
No, they probably, in your defense, they probably like you, but literally, and they would quote this, and that McMahon is a fucking prick, blah blah blah, like, and it's a savage level of attack, and it's attack based on levels that have nothing to do with what we're actually discussing. So they will take a sentence I've just said to you, and they will turn that sentence inside out and present it as something entirely opposite. And even though the evidence is there, and you can rewind the evidence of our brief interaction, they will insist that it is something entirely other. And they will fulfill their rabid prejudice. Now, that idea of going, that's a much more commonplace quality in humanity than we think. Again, if you want to just look at social media and Twitter and these things to see the level of anonymous, rabid savagery out there.
There's a page called Scouse Mothers, right? I think, or Scouse Girls or something like that, right? Just while they're there, and I'm not messing. You want to see what I read on it sometimes. Now, I'm not like this outfit thing. That's terrible on the line. But what I do is I read some of them to my girlfriend, and then I say, if that was a male or a female, and she'd always be like this, and it could be equivalent of this. Right? Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
She said, prick balls came into bed today, and I decided that I didn't like him anymore, so I chopped his dick off. Ha ha ha! And you'll see the comments. Oh my God, that's you! Oh my God, Mary! Oh, remember you said this? And then I turned this around and I said to her, the bitch got into the bed tonight, and it annoyed me so much that I strangled her and boxed the head off her. Whoa. Words. Different place. Same thing.
But also,
you know what I mean? Now listen, that didn't happen, and I would never say that. I just want to disclose this. You can't say that in other places because some motherfucker would edit this bit out and then they don't realise that.
Exactly. Or accuse you of using humour to conceal your real misogyny.
Yeah,
we can recontextualise anything. That's the era we're living in. But the reality of language and the reality of interpretation, like, our intent might be one thing. Again, it's back to you and I having a couple of whiskies and laughing our bollocks off.
Yes.
We're not racist. But
proper 12 whiskey, yeah?
Yeah?
Proper 12 whiskey.
Proper 12.
Proper 12. Yeah,
it's not bad. I'm more of a redbreast 12-year-old myself.
Yeah, we'll have to get a bottle of proper 12 in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just to make sure the man has a word in it. He's a good man.
Well, he's a good man, and according to others, he's a whole series of lists of obscene accusations that they have now decided are fact. So you look at McGregor, I don't know who he is or what he's done, but I know there are people out there who are absolutely adamant to the core of their being that he is, and just fill in the blanks of a long list of accusations, and guilty of all of them. And
listen, if you go back to the start of the story, they were always like that.
I know, but they've been given a veracity now.
I mean, you're giving it. Yeah,
this is back to I believe you before you open your mouth.
Yeah.
But again, just to be clear on it, I'm talking about the idea of anybody who's ever been in a relationship knows how vicious women can be, just because they're people, because they know how vicious men can be.
Do you know what's scary? Do you ever still be in that relationship and try to think about what it would be like to be outside that relationship, and when you know the viciousness on the inside, you're like, I'm just going to stay in.
But that's an amazing statement, because the reality of coercive behaviour, the reality of power, back to this idea of waking the feminists and back to the idea that all men are bastards and all women are victims. It's about power. Terry Gilliam gave an interview recently, and he's been murdered for it now because he talks about the idea of power. I've been in positions, and it happened in Los Angeles, and it's happened here in Ireland more so, but I've been in positions where women in positions of power, with a couple of drinks in them, decided it was okay to follow me into a bathroom and make a grab. And they think it's flattering, and they think it's kind of kinky, and they think I've given them the nod to say that I'm the kind of guy who would be into this S&M stuff. And then you go, okay, this is not for me, thank you very much. Now, I have a missus, I have kids, all these things. You've met her, maybe. And yet here you are in this bathroom right now at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking that because of your position of power, it's okay to do what you just did. Suddenly, I'm a scumbag. Suddenly, she's there washing her hands after me pissing on it, going, what are you doing here? Next day, her position is, you better start getting with the program or you better start fucking off. Now, gender is not the issue there. Power is the issue.
Yes.
Now, the difference is that someone like Harvey Weinstein, who, again, I think should get a bullet in the back of the head, frankly.
Yep.
But someone like Weinstein, who, when we use the word scum, you're talking about actual scum. And I'm not basing that on some of the reports from some of the different women who were in positions of perhaps deliberate coercion. I'm talking about actual aggressive, horribly violent acts of rape. From an extraordinary woman, extraordinary actress, Annabella Sciorra is her name, who wrote an incredible piece about it, and then she decided she didn't want to go any further with it, and she left it at that. But the idea of going, he is a depiction, he is the poster child of everything that's wrong with men. Now, the reality is that he does not represent most men that we know. He does not represent most men in our group. Can you conceive of any situation where you're sitting with a group of friends of yours and some guy starts boasting about raping a chick and everyone raises a tequila and knocks the glass back?
Oh, he would be butchered.
Or would they punch the fucking head off him?
Fucking butchered,
You did
yeah.
what?
Butchered.
Now, everybody I know and everybody you know and everybody Robin knows. Now, think about the idea of the exponential reality of that. Not only are rapists the lowest form of scum in our society, the only thing lower is a pedophile. But not only are they not accepted, not only is rape culture not celebrated, we are disgusted by it. Now, at the same time, we can have a couple of whiskeys, we can joke about race, we can joke about our misses, we can joke about sex, we can joke about whatever the fuck we want to joke about, we can laugh our arses off about it and mean absolutely none of it in an ugly way. We mean it in a subversive way into seeing the world differently. Now with hate speech laws, we can be put in jail for that, or we can have our careers destroyed for that, or we can have our lives removed for that, or we can have a woman who's standing close by, or a man, by the way, because back to, again, repeal, the amount of men who queued up, fey fucking men queuing up to take a little bit of the fucking action because they can't get any fucking poontang in real life. But these guys are standing there going, I just made a recording. So a barman made a recording, or a bar girl made a recording, sends it into whatever fucking newspaper it is, and we're dead in the water. So what we have to do now is that the only way we can have any conversation is to make sure that nobody is around. We got to check each other's phones. We still could be bugged.
We do that anyway.
Yeah, but again, this is
We've raised well.
but this is the problem. Yeah. We're now in a situation where self-censorship is the only way forward. So what happens, and again, all history has proven what happens when you start to censor, when you start to suppress. What happens? The suppression leads to a rage, leads to a build-up, leads to an explosion.
Yeah.
And we are now presenting suppression and censorship as noble tools of the left and humanistic engagements for the betterment of all. And it's a total fucking lie. Yeah. So when we talk about waking the feminists, or we talk about you are what I, or we talk about I believe you before you open your mouth, it takes away all the complexity and all the reality of scenarios, which is women are capable of being fucking wacko. Anybody who's ever lived with a woman knows just how wacko women are capable of being. Does that mean they're wrong? Does that mean they're scum? Does that mean that men should be allowed to treat them badly in terms of violence or aggression or rape? No fucking way. No way. But does that mean that we got to ignore all that and depict them as victims and saints and all men as scumbag bastards? No, that's a fucking total lie as well, and we're buying into that lie. And the women, the opportunists, men too, who are taking advantage of that are just like the people who take advantage of democracy. They're fucking lowlifes who are going, this is my day. They're the sneaky little fucks. They're the ones who never had a position on anything, and now they're controlling the narrative.
Because they just sidestep their way through. They do what we were talking about at the start. They cut straight through because they don't give a fuck about anybody.
Because it's in their interest to keep us all barking at each other and bitching at each other and all in a state of turmoil.
And they will butcher their own to prove that, listen, I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
Absolutely.
And the bees up top, they come in and they lift that guy up to the top, and he just dodges everywhere.
They will. It's a great phrase, butcher their own. Look at Phil Hogan. He's now the Minister for Agriculture in Europe. And he destroyed farmers' lives here. He was the one, and again, he was the one who he brought in water charges. He did all kinds of total
face to the name now.
Complete betrayals of his people. And the reward for betraying his people was this incredible position in Europe. And what happens is, it's almost like it's a gauntlet that's thrown down. It's like back to Varadkar with his sign, welfare cheats cheat us all. So it was between him and Simon Coveney to become leader of Fine Gael. He didn't win the vote, but he was given the authorization because he was the one who proved he could screw his people. Now, Simon Coveney was the one who says he would have all children out of hotels by a certain date. What did he do? He left his position and he moved on to become Minister for Foreign Affairs. These guys, they have demonstrated with evidence-based justification that, or verification that these betrayals have led to being promoted.
Yeah.
Promoted. Imagine being promoted, not just for incompetence, but being promoted for betraying your people.
Betraying your people. And
we've a long list of that.
And people do ask me about Sinn Féin and stuff like that. The reason why Sinn Féin has been in power because they won't betray the people, and to me that is what's happening. You know. Now, Sinn Féin get into power. This is my view on it. If you're going to vote when this vote comes up, vote Sinn Féin. This is why, right? They are the party, to me, are capable of leading the country because imagine somebody trying to get in there for 100 years and then all of a sudden we get in and it's like, now we're going to take all the money and we're going to rob everything. That's not going to happen because inside Sinn Féin, that will police itself. I know for the fact if I'm getting in there and other people are getting in there, we're in there motivated on the ground. Not only that, then you have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that are outside for the first time with microscopes making sure that every single thing is done right. And to me, I would enjoy that because then it's like you have people watching the people building the building to make sure the building's being built right. Now at the moment we have the group in there that being making the same mistakes. These are the children of the people that fucked the place over a long, long time ago. And then their grandfathers were the people who were given the rewards for fucking the people over back during the famine even. Here's a big house, here's loads of land, we can trust you, we know what you're really like. And they are descendants of this. That's what we're still dealing with. Still the same thing in the country. So if Sinn Féin got voted in, to me, not only would it's not about a party to me, it's not about like, we're finally in, screw all of yous. It's not about that. It's about getting a group in there that actually is capable, that have been festering for 100 years. The best people getting put into the positions to be able to deal with the right things. That if that happens to me, this country changes. And not only that, as I said, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael actually have a use for once. They will be the ones backing in, making sure that everything is done fucking right. Because they're not going to sit there and be like, we're out. They'll be outside going, watching everything, which is brilliant. Is that not what the society needs? Is that not what Ireland needs? That is what we need. If we get that, then we have regulators, without even calling them regulators, they're just frustrated fucks who hate the people that are in power and are going to make sure that they're doing it right. The people on the outside now, which are Sinn Féin, which are the frustrated fucks if you most of the time, they're screaming in that the boys are ruining the building and it's terrible, and the boys inside are going, don't mind them, do you not remember back in 92? And people are going, yeah, keep fucking the building up. If we switch around these positions, we have people on the outside that are actually better watching the people that are motivated on the inside to actually build this country. I want to ask you some questions because this is how I think we could solve all of this shit as well. Are you racist?
Am I racist?
Yeah.
There's two things I can't abide: intolerance of other people's culture and the Dutch. That's a quote from...
Are you a homophobe?
Am I a homophobe?
No.
I'm bisexual. Very hard for me to be a homophobe.
So to me, you're not a racist and you're not a homophobe. At least we cleared that up. We continue with the whiskey. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? If somebody says something that comes across as racist and somebody goes, whoa, that was racist. Are you racist? No, I'm not racist. Or I sound. That's not good enough anymore.
But again, it's
good enough.
But back to the idea of evidence. The idea of...
If you're a racist, would you not say you're a racist? If you're a homophobe, would you not say you're a homophobe?
But many racists don't believe they're racist, because guess what? Many racists are not. Many people accused of racism are not racist.
Yeah.
Many people are afraid. But again, when I was accused of racism, I can't even remember the context. It's back to the Antifa lunatics, but it was an accusation of racism in relation to Varadkar. So it was my problem with Varadkar was that he was half Indian. That's I won't say that's a tactic in a way, but it's in a way a lot of this stuff lines up. You know what I mean? It's like, be very careful what you say about me. No, but again, it's back to what we're talking about. As I said, and I genuinely believe that it could be a wonderful thing that we have a mixed race leader who's gay and who's young. We both verified that he could have been one of the greatest leaders in the history of the modern world. We're not saying that lightly.
No.
So is that racism? But also, the people who accuse me of racism, I was in Africa twice, working with a major crew in Africa. What the fuck have they ever done in their lives for anybody who's from Africa? And I'm the fucking racist? Go fuck yourself.
You're bang on. The thing is, people say, like, now, I've never been accused of being racist, but I give you a copy of my book, and when you read the book, you'll realise that why I am who I am, all right, and why I would stand here and say why I'm qualified to be and say the things that I am. Because I've did this. I lived in a house with a Nigerian who married my mother. And people would say, are you racist? No. Was that situation horrible? Yeah, I fucking hated it. I hated the man bitter. I hated him to his heart. But not because he was black.
Yeah.
I just hate him because of the situation.
Yeah,
now,
of course.
He mightn't have been as bad as I thought, but as a kid, you're protecting that territory. I am not racist because of that. And if you're a racist, why the fuck would you be going to Africa, Terry? Do you know what I'm saying? In a way, you know, if you're racist, it's very clear to see these things. We need to break it down a little bit, and we need to be able to communicate where we can get through the stuff a little bit quicker if we just be able to say, hold on, Ron. Are you a homophobe? No. Probably sound. And we move on. I don't have to now, you are in my head, and I'm going to prove it to everybody that you are, and then you're going to be like, oh, I am. It's not going to work like that. If you were and you are really passionate about it, you'd say it. That's the way it is. That's what these things, if I was a United supporter, I'd say that. If I was a Liverpool supporter, I'd say, that's what support is, isn't it? If you're going to hide it and you're going to do it in sneaky little ways, well then, perfect. Keep them racists hid. Keep that racism hid if you are racist, because there's no place in their society. And homophobe is no place in their society either. So if you are going to hide it, fucking hide it well.
But again, this is part of the problem. There are people, men and women, but obviously men in this context in terms of anger. There are men out there who, for whatever reason, whatever complex reason, some of it is could almost be simplistic in that they're sublimating their rage at their own latent homosexuality, but they feel the need to hurt other men because they're gay. Now, I can't comprehend that. I can't comprehend the idea of trying to hurt someone else because they're different until I realise that's what we've been doing throughout time. That's what tribes do. That's what cliques do. That's what individuals who are insecure do. They attack the opposite. They attack the difference. They attack the one who's weak or deemed to be weak. When we talk about racism, when we talk about the idea of, you mentioned these videos going around, and again, the same as yourself. I'm from an area called Dalton Park in Mullingar, the centre of the universe it was to us. And every single fucking day we had warfare. You did not come home without being in at least 4 or 5 fights. And at night, when you got older, when we were teenagers and into literally early 20s, you go to a nightclub and it was war. It was all out war.
Especially after it.
Yeah. Now, there was a kind of a semblance of honour in it, and that glassings were very rare, and bottles were very rare, and all that kind of stuff.
I do agree with that. I do.
And there was nobody set out to do real damage to somebody.
Yeah.
And there was none of this fantasy in your head. But, so we look at these videos of a whole bunch of young kids on Harcourt Street. Now, are some of them assholes? Yes, they fucking are.
Yeah.
And will some of them become assholes as adults? Yes, they fucking will. Will some of them become potentially remarkable people when they're adults? Yes, they fucking will. Is their colour an issue? Their colour is an issue for people who are afraid. So there's this idea of the great replacement that they're talking about. And Gemma O'Doherty seems to be obsessed with it. And you look at it and you...
She is a fucking...
she breaks my heart, frankly, because she contacted me to ask her to help her in a campaign to run for president. And she was in my home, she was around my children, and she was beautiful. And there was absolutely zero indication on any level whatsoever of any of these traits that she's revealed. And I'm talking about working with her for months. And when you look back on that, you go, either I was incredibly naive, or she hid it very well, or there's a new agenda in play.
She's only using this. This is it.
I don't really know. For me, it's very, very sad, because this is a woman who lost her husband to tragedy and lost her job for what she believed was the right thing, and it kind of was the right thing, what she was trying to do. But now you see her generating that video where she walked in and the Muslim guy was behind the counter, who was this really gentle...
Swords.
This really gentle man. No, it was I think it was a different one. That was the one to do with the bacon, the pork. But this really gentle man behind the counter. And she was asking him about his life and asking him about the shop. And he hadn't a clue what she was doing or who she was. But all he tried to do was be gentle with her. There was no agenda. There was no nothing. He clearly hadn't a clue what was going on. And the video, I'm not sure if the video was taken down since, but I think it should have been left up because it would have done infinitely more to discredit her if it was left up. Not just her, but her mentality, or the mentality of these people who seem to be proposing.
Taken down.
This is a soft, gentle man who's here in this country, who's trying to run his business, who's trying to make sense of this strange woman talking to him, and all he's trying to do is be gentle outside his shyness. And you look at it and you go, I don't know if that's racism. Maybe it is, but whatever it is, it's fucking horrible. It's bullying. It's the worst kind bullying. Of, and it's looking down on somebody, and it's pseudo-intellectualism being used as a weapon, and it's horrible. It's fucking horrible.
She's the worst type of bully, right? Because she's the type of bully that doesn't want to get punched in the face. And if she did get punched in the face in the way that, you know what I mean? She did get any, don't condone any violence towards any women or anything like that. But this woman came into a housing estate up my way and literally was talking to kids on a camera and comparing it to what'd she say, a hole in Calcutta or something like that. She's going to a housing estate, talking about kids here, right? This woman went into the shops down the way from my way that this doesn't even look like Tala. You walked into a multicultural shop. These people buy their shops there. Do you understand that there's places away that sell that there's Irish pubs? That's a multicultural pub, is it? Should people walk in there and kick the earth? This woman is literally, she's a bully who is waiting for the reaction to get more of a reaction. And it's the worst type of bully. It goes into, what would she, metamania.
Mythomania.
She's a metamania.
But again, just to clarify, because I feel very sad when I watch her. I don't watch her anymore. I contacted her long before this happened because I was asked to publicly out her, and I refused to do that as well because I was thinking I'm not going to do this for your pleasure. No, I'm not going to. But then eventually, of my own volition, I had contacted her much earlier, and I says, "Look, I'm heartbroken to see what you become here, and unfortunately, there's no room for any further communication in relation to you thinking that I'm on your side because I'm not. But I wish you the best." And then she starts to reveal more and more and all this kind of stuff. But you're watching it and you go, is Gemma O'Doherty the boogeyman or the boogie woman? Is Gemma O'Doherty the poster child for everything that's wrong with this country? The evil, the far right, the progression toward a major... And you go, this is horseshit. She's utterly powerless. She has run for election twice, and the electorate has made it clear that they want nothing to do with her. She has no real power whatsoever except the power of condemnation that is from people who are constantly talking about her in, a position of condemnation. And you're going, the actual damage, the real life damage that has been done on a daily basis is by Varadkar and his cohorts. And these people are using all their passion, shooting their load on this nonsense. And it is ridiculous nonsense. Utterly powerless nonsense. Yeah. And they're not questioning the powerful. Nope. They're not doing anything about the actual powerful. And that's where it bothers me, because it becomes a kind of, it gives us a brief sense of satisfaction to think that we did something. You did fuck all. You attacked some lonely woman who's broken and misguided, or maybe operating on someone's behalf, I don't know. But she is not the enemy. No. She's in other times in our culture, she'd be the character, the oddball, the outsider. Yeah. Now she's Hitler, and you're going, this is nonsense.
You know, you are right.
And all the people who are, not all the people, because there's a very, very small group of people around them, some of whom are very well-meaning, and I'm sure for her in her head she's well-meaning. She has convinced herself that this is a protective desire for our culture and our history, and that we are part of George Soros' plan for the Great Displacement and all this kind of stuff. Now, the second thing she did was she posted that picture of those children in that school. And it was, majority were immigrant children. And she says that this is a picture of the future. And you go, you've just taken children and turned them into a weapon to justify a position. And you have so little empathy that you don't realize these are beautiful, innocent human beings who know nothing about your politics, know nothing about Soros or any of these fucking things, which may or may not be true. But look what you've just done. And also, she's not stupid. She's a very, very smart woman, so she can't be unaware of what she's doing. So she's either building a campaign that might be the long game, because who knows what Ireland is going to be in 10 years' time. Who knows what Ireland's going to be in 15 years' time? She could be leading a party that's neck and neck with whoever in the elections. You just don't know. She might be playing that long game. But you're watching it going, this is heartbreaking, because she is not the enemy in the sense of having any power. If your enemy has no power, they're not your enemy.
Not your enemy, yeah. They're
just some rat snapping at your heels. Show them a bit of cheese and leave them alone.
Yeah.
Don't scream at them like they're a lion and demand that everybody look at this way while I'm pillaging your fucking fridge.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right, 100%.
So when we look at this idea of going, back to language, back to the idea of Sinn Féin, regardless of how people feel about Sinn Féin, and people have many, many complex emotional responses to Sinn Féin. Based on history that may be true or may be fucking false.
Most of it, a lot of it, when we're starting to see now with collusion, people are starting, to me, this is the biggest time I've ever heard people go, oh, I see it.
Yeah.
Jerry Adams said it on the seat there, that when people go, when armies go into countries, and he explained it in a way that I've never ever felt it, it made me hate the British Army this much less, right? Because he said when they come to Ireland, he says, when an army goes somewhere, Patrick, he says that the idea is that they use anything necessary to beat the enemy. At the time, the IRA were the enemy. So what you do is you find out who hates your enemy, and what you do is you arm them. You arm them, because then they become a militia that you use that can operate outside the law. And when you're dealing with both of them, your mission is to eliminate that threat, no matter what. So everything that got used against the Irish wasn't because the British Army hated the Irish. It was because they were sent in with the mission, like they are with most countries, to hate the people in the countries. Like we see it in the Middle East all the time now, where they go in with one objective, they find out who hate the people that they're objecting against, they arm the people that hate them too and make them friends. But then sometimes they end up hating them, and they have to arm the people that hate them, and then they hate them, and we arm all these people. It's a military objective to be able to do this. And with the collusion, we're starting to see this, that the British Army at that time were the most armed people on the island. So they were the biggest power at that time. The IRA were reacting to a response not backed by a government, not backed by the British Empire, if you must, not opening the roads and housing estates, like you said, with the car being able to come down, beat the head off these hippies that were living around the corner, and drive back up to the north. Same way when people were going in to kill, say, that the situation with Pat Finucane. How terrible was that? The man sitting there having dinner with his kids. If you haven't seen this, it's on Spotlight. Go and watch it on YouTube, and it will educate you on what's actually going on this island a little bit. They came into Pat Finucane's home while he was sitting there with his kids, and they shot him 14 times in the face. They will tell you the British knew who it was. Not only that, the British had cleared the estate and told them that there was a dry run. Imagine me going to kill you, Terry, and the guard had told me, "Go on, it's Grand Paddy. Go down and kill Terry McMahon there. Do whatever you want to him. The police are not going to stop you on the way or the way back." And you know what? Here's the gun. These people are powerful now, and they are literally being armed, as I said, by the British government, but they're ordinary Joes that are confused and hurt and having anger with their neighbours, if you must.
It's a brilliant way of describing it, because it's what's happening in our culture now.
Isn't it?
We're channeling anger into aggressively corrupting forces, as opposed to challenging it or channeling it into something remarkable. Because what I'd say about Sinn Féin, regardless of how people might feel about them, look at the reality. Why does Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil fear them so much? Just ask yourself that question. And in the answering of that question through interrogation, I think it'll begin to reveal itself. If Sinn Féin was something that was an alliance with Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, I think there'd be a problem. And I think already the questions are being asked about the idea. Like Mary Lou is in an incredible position at the moment. It's a time in history that we're going to look back on, and it's going to be something monumentally powerful, or is going to be something that was used to cripple. One or the other. And they're going to use her as a weapon, literally because she's a woman and because of her power and because of her innate, extraordinary belief in something way beyond their own beliefs. But ask yourself the fundamental question. Why are our sitting government, who have weaponized austerity to the degree that has killed much more than were killed in Northern Ireland, more people have died by suicide than died in the entire history of the Northern Ireland conflict. Like, that's an incredible statistic. And I've been,
war.
but I've been attacked for that before, saying it's bullshit. Check it out, it's been verified.
I've verified it.
Even the journal.ie verified it.
I
Fact
heard
check.
you saying it. And I went and checked it myself.
So now, before I said it, I had to go through all the statistics and find out if it was true. After I said it, there was murder, there was accusations, not murder is a terrible word to use in that context, but it was accusations of bullshit, blah, blah, blah. And then the Journal of all things did a fact check and came back and verified it. But again, was there any apology? No. Go fuck yourself, you're still a prick. The reality is that if you want to ask who the enemy is in our culture, the evidence is clear and transparent. And it's not Sinn Féin. No. It's Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and the policies that they're implementing together that is destroying our culture, destroying our children's future. And if we don't find some way of fighting back, we are going to regret, when we go into old age, our absolute cowardice. Because that's what it is. We are dressing up all kinds of bullshit to conceal our cowardice. Even this left versus right fiasco is an attempt to mask our cowardice. Because we have, on our watch, we've allowed Ireland to be destroyed by people who don't give a fuck about our culture. Not because they're gay, not because they're multi-ethnic, not because they're young, but because they're involved in an ideology that bears no relation to our reality. They're only interested in Europe, auditioning for jobs, and protecting their own tiny little crew, which is made up of bankers and really dodgy people.
Absolutely, and investors. And saying that, here's another note I want to make on the things, and then I want to go into it because I want to talk to you a little bit about things, and then we'll wrap up because I do this all day with you, man. These little groups that are going around and beating kids up, all right? This is really pissing me off because to go around and beat somebody up in a gang, all right? And this is happening. Young fellas are just getting jumped and people are jumping them and they what? Dude, is that hard? Does that make you think you're hard or something? You're not hard. Like, literally, I get to see people going into that cage down there and going into the cage on shows, and I get to see the real human being. You're not hard. You're not Bugsy Malone. You're not these gangster lads that you think you are. You are actually probably really, really soft when it comes down to one-on-one. And you need to compare yourself to the people that have fought for this country at your age. You're running around in fucking North Face tracksuits now, kicking young fellas in the head that are a lot younger than you, ruining your housing estates, driving cars into parks, being mad lads. That's not funny. It's not. You're not hard. The situation this country is in at the moment is in a bad situation regarding homelessness, regarding the leaders, regarding the health services, regarding jobs, regarding the future for all of us. And there's a big group of the youth running around acting like absolute fucking clowns. Come on, lads. Get a bleeding hobby. Go and do something. Try and fix your housing estate. If you're running around and you're acting like a fucking gobshite, do you know what? You deserve nothing in the future. And if the country does, as I said at the start of this podcast, I feel that this literally is the end of the storm. And it's the darkest before the dawn. And the people like myself and yourself and all this, we had to go and grow up and get qualified. And now we're here. We're ready to go. We're ready to fix this. The election's coming up. Stop acting like fucking idiots and go out there and actually help your estate, help your community, because you're going to get nothing for it. Nobody gives a shit about you. And when you grow up, what happens is you're going to have kids and people are going to remember who the father of them kids are, and your kids are going to carry the same burden. So listen, please with this, just cop on and start putting pride into your housing estate. Put pride into your name. And you know what? Maybe in a few years you can look back and you can say, do you know what? When it came to the fight when my country needed me, it wasn't a gun running into it, the GPO. It was this. It was helping the community. It was not wrecking the place when we don't have the money and the resources and the people who actually give a shit about these places to fix them. They don't care, lads. So if you ruin them, they're going to wreck them even more. If you throw your rubbish in the field, they're going to leave it there and they're going to take pictures of it and they're going to call you a scumbag and say, look how these people live. That's what's going to happen. So if you really, really, really love your mother, love your family, love your name and your country, start copping your mates on. Start copping people on and stop running around. If you want to fight each other, come down and join my club. And what I'll do is in a few weeks when you're ready to spar, I'll let you spar each other and you can have the feeling of hitting someone in the face. And you go, well, he can have the fair right of hitting you in the face. And after it, it'll be like if me and you ran the race. These people that are running around and ruining the place and all that, they are the people that are claiming really, no, you're fat shaming me. Rather than if we run the race, if we have that little fight, we will love each other at the end of it. We will hug each other. At the end of the race, no matter what happens, I win, you win. No one really gives a fuck. But at the end of it, we'll hug each other. And that's the progress. Skip all the other bullshit of running around with 20 of you jumping on one lad, kicking his head in, and then everyone goes, oh, they're mad lads. You're not mad. There's 20 of you. Doesn't, you know what I mean? It's not the same. And he's doing it in a situation where the guards are not doing anything about it. We know that. There's no consequences for it. So you're not gangsters. It's just not the same. If there was consequences and you were going around and doing it and taking the risks, there might be something to it, but there's not. The country's pillaged and he's fucking ruining the place. Please stop it with this.
Respect. Brilliantly articulated. Now I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to go into this interview or this documentary as well.
I went to that. Fuck that.
Yeah.
But if we have a society where there is no consequence to action, just like you said, which is brilliant, what happens? We become anarchic. We become animalistic. We become incapable of recognizing the reality of morality, the reality of consequence, the reality of our actions. Because we feed on our need and our need alone. We have a fractured society. If we have a society where there are consequences to action, and I don't mean punitive consequences, I mean consequences where you see the effect that you've had on the victims that you've created, actual victims, where you see the consequence of the barbarism of your behavior, there is a possibility you might change. There is a possibility you might recognize that what you're doing is wrong and that you might attempt to make reparation. You might try to protect your community, protect your area. You might think of your future children. You might think of your legacy, your name, your mother, your father, your grandparents, and your great-grandchildren to come. All of that is a sublime idea, and it's why we create functioning societies. But when you have a society where our leaders, moral, political, educational, philosophical, economical, are allowed to act with the most obscene impunity imaginable, with zero consequences, what do you learn as a child? What do you learn as a child when the trickle-down effect never makes your estate? What do you learn as a child when you see all around you a constant middle finger, fuck you to your life and your future? What do you see when you hear that we're one of the richest countries in the world and your fridge is empty? Because your mother and father are struggling to pay that mortgage to a corrupt bank. What happens when you have an anger that's so inexpressible and inarticulate to you, you can't find any way to take positive action? Because every time you try, you're told to shut the fuck up because you got the wrong accent, the wrong haircut, the wrong tracksuit, the wrong postal address, the wrong gender now. What happens when every single thing that you think about in terms of aspiration is shat on from a height? What happens when you find a gang of people who share that anger and are inarticulate and still don't know how to express it? What happens when you realize that you've become part of a barbaric tribe built by the people in power? Now, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't take responsibility for your actions. Some of these guys are fucking filth, cowards. And to me, cowardice is one of the worst traits in a human being. Me too. The guy of those 20 who tries to stop his friends hitting that kid knows he's going to get the shit beaten out of him too. But if he got the shit beaten out of him too, that kid lying on the ground with the original victim, he's the future of our nation. He's the Kevin Barry. He's the noble, brave one. And he's the one that we need to understand is coming from a position seeded by these people in power that needs to be taught that standing up for what's right, standing up for what's noble, is the best of our history and is the creator of our future. And we can't let that happen if we, as children, see our parents acquiesce to scum fucking us in our sitting room every day. What happens when a kid walks in and he sees his father pants down around his ankles getting fucked over a table and the father's paying for the own Vaseline? That's what's happening to us with our banks and with our controlling masters. A child sees the examples of heroism or imitates the examples of cowardice. And we as parents, as a generation of cowards, are constantly giving permission for the most primal aspect of a child driven by fear to come out. We've got to take responsibility for our children. Our children have got to take responsibility for themselves. But the only way we can combine to change both our futures is to recognize who the real enemy is.
And we're in a situation, right, where I do like looking out the door. People say to me, "How can I make a change in my community?" And I say, "This is what I suggest people do. I suggest, why don't you knock at everybody on your door and organise Saturday where you just go out and clean his road."
Brilliant.
All right? And not only that, we start a little challenge where maybe we try and get who does the quickest clean up on the road in the housing estate, and we use our Instagram live while someone's doing it, and you just have 2 hours of doing it, and the council give an award of, I don't know, a dinner for everybody on that road there that night that win it. Mad stuff to be thinking, Paddy,
But what happens when...
we have tools now, like social media. They're not only that, they give us what we're yearning.
But what happens when a whole bunch of people bring out a barbecue onto an open area, start cooking food and having a couple of beers and having a good time?
Food safety comes down. And
Cops are down in 5 seconds.
And that's it. And
communities are fine once they're locked into their own little cages.
Yep. But say we're in, like, as I said, this idea, we have these tools now, and what people are yearning for is the pat on the back. The gratification. We have it. And we can use it and twist it into a good way. If somebody's kicking a young fella into the face on the ground with 20 of his mates, do you know what he's looking for the other 19 of them? See that?
Yeah.
See that? The gratification of it. That's what he's looking for.
Or he's looking to hide his fear.
Yeah, but he is hiding his fear because he's hiding between these guys. And the thing is, what you're doing is, Irish people have been kicked in the face for many years. No matter if you came to this country or you're from this country and you mix together, stop kicking each other in the face. Everybody else is kicking each other in the face. We're being kicked from the top. They're standing on our heads constantly every single fucking day. We need to get this place together and realise that, I keep going back to it, there's 6 million of us. There's 6 million of us. It's not that big of a problem. We don't have to have these hubs and all this stuff, because they're for people, they're for countries that are overcrowding in blocks of towers of millions of people, that you're talking 60, 70 million people. Our leader for 6 million people is getting paid more than Boris Johnson.
And Donald Trump.
And Donald, use the noodle here. This lad's wage is making him think that he's dealing with the same amount of people.
He's worth it. You'd stop begrudging that a decent wage.
Yeah, stop. If hate comes in, send me to jail. There's a great campaign in England called Gloves Up, Knives Down. Brilliant. Loads of people have, loads of boxers that have gone for it, and it's the idea about bringing young fellas into clubs and training them and letting them spar each other and put the knives down, lift the gloves up. Listen, if you get hit with gloves, you live to see another day. It's like Friday. Did you ever see the film Friday? What a brilliant thing. He says to him, put the gun down. Back in my day, you lifted up your deuce. And he says, and you went home. Everyone went home. It's cowardly to shoot with a gun. We created a men's program called Fire and Ice, right? And here's another situation I'm having with this. It's free. It's free. You don't have to pay no money for it. I've got 3 people together for it. You come here, you do 3 hours. You do 1 hour of jiu-jitsu with me. You learn how to get choked, learn how to tap out, learn how to choke someone else, and realise that we actually aren't all that tough. And if we get caught, we get caught. We reset and we go again. People think that we get one life. We don't. It's like a computer game. We have extra lives. We do a breathing process. And then with Neil, we do. He's trained by the guy Wim Hof, and we go downstairs. There's a drum, boom, boom, boom. It's in your heart. Everyone's together. Everyone's in their pants, and we go downstairs. And there's 2 big buckets of ice, and we get in them. All right. And Neil collects your eyes, and he looks at you. Stay with me, Paddy. Stay with me. And you get out. And everyone. And the drum goes again, and he gets out. And the next person gets in. It's free. All right. I open 20 spots to do it here. Do you know what I'm finding hard to do? People book the spots, and then some of them don't turn up. The last time we had 11 people not turn up, and I had 20 spots. What? Yeah, so 11 people that were free. They could have came down and done this for absolute nothing and saved their own life. The thing is that now I have to find a situation where I can't not do it for free, because people have to be committed financially, and then maybe give them that money back or something. But
when's the next one on?
You're in it, Terry, don't worry. But would you be into it?
Absolutely.
I'm going to try do one in February now, so another one. And I said, we have guys from the travelling community. We have guys that guys that are retired, guys that are just bored off their head, guys that just are lost. And we all sit down, and at the end of it, after we all get out of cold water, eating biscuits, sitting there, everybody's just talking, and we're all human, because the cold water makes everybody feel the same. When you're sitting in that cold water, you're not thinking you're a prick, Terry. You're in that water, you're vulnerable. Everyone's looking at you like, help me, and everyone's encouraging you, and then all of a sudden the human spirit just gets broken, and we click, and it's like, these are not like me. They actually like me. They wanted me to get through that thing. And I'm going to try and bring this across the country as much as I can, especially with the macho part of it, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I choke you, you choke me. I tap you, tap, and we both go, that wasn't that vulnerable. Like the race at the start. So we can start doing this now. When I did set up this program, it's called the men's program. Guess what happened?
Accusations of...
No women allowed, are they? What do you mean there's no women allowed there? Why are you just doing it for men?
Paddy the misogynist.
Yeah. Do you know why? Because a higher percentage of girls go get their hair done and their nails done and their fake tan done, and they sit and they talk to the person that's doing that, which is kind of like a therapy to them. There's a much lower percentage of men that go and get their hair done all the time, and their nails done and their fake tan done, and so they don't get that therapy. So I've created something where hopefully we can stop people killing themselves. We can stop people going down a road that they shouldn't be going down, that realising that they're worthless now, or we can get people back to thinking in their own heads.
But again, just in relation to the gender thing, it's okay for women to do things just for women. It's okay for men to do things just for...
Absolutely.
It's okay for people to do things that they're nervous about doing, and they hope they're building a community. And the fact that you're accused of somehow a wrongdoing and that is just nonsense. So fuck them. Like,
I'm not making nothing from this. So to be wrong, why would I drag a load of people here on a Saturday and put them into ice tanks for my benefit? Yeah. It's not going to benefit me.
It's because that's how much of a misogynist you are.
I know, and it's mental. Like, I can literally go off into the... Just fucking leave it. I'm grand. I have mine. Go away. And that'd be it. But it's not like that. To me, as I said, it's like my mother put it into me. She installed it into me before all of the other bullshit got to me. Listen. Help people. Look after people. Brilliant. Be good, Paddy. You know what I mean? Do your best, son. Them little things. My mother is not highly educated, and my sister raised me. Father wasn't there. So I could be the furthest one away. I know how strong women are. So I'm the furthest one away from people that would ever harm a woman or do something bad to
But that doesn't matter.
Women are the strongest.
The reality of your evidence-based life doesn't matter. You are what I accuse you of being.
Oh, you're dead right.
It's incredible.
I'm going to accuse you now of being an absolute fucking cracking director. Patrick's Day. My God. Seen it over Christmas there. I still don't know what happened. I'm still a little bit. But brilliant. Fair play to you. To think like that. That was brilliant. Absolutely amazing. I want to tip me hat to you on that. But the one I want to tip there, which is out, it's going to be on Virgin Media. When is that going to be on?
On the 8th. Which is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It's on tomorrow.
On tomorrow. So... we're out on Tuesday.
We're out today, Tuesday.
Oh, today, yeah, sorry.
Today is Tuesday the 7th.
Right, I'm lost. You know the Christmas week's how they go.
Tomorrow is Wednesday the 8th.
Yeah, right. So tomorrow,
even if we're recording this on Sunday the 5th,
make sure you check this out, because it's a Spike O'Sullivan documentary. So Terry's been following Spike O'Sullivan the last little while, over to his fights, and if you don't know Spike's one of your own. Listen, he's a true soul. He's one of these guys that I don't think you can corrupt him. You know what I mean? I'm going to get a big bag of money someday, and I'm going to try it. I'm going to drop up to his gaff. Listen, do you want to be a dub? I'm only messing. See when he take the money, but I don't think he would.
WBO Intercontinental Middleweight Champion, the Fighting Pride of Cork, Ireland, Gary Spike O'Sullivan.
What was it like for you to be backstage before a fight? Would this be new to you? Would it be different? Mad, innit? What was it like when they had to go back and cut that pound of weight? Were you panicking? I seen you coming to the door. I could see your face in the door. I was like, look at Daddy. He said, I was comfort's all there. He looks like he's shitting himself.
No, it's not that I'm shitting myself. It's that I'm trying to be as quiet as possible, as inoffensive as possible, as invisible as possible, really. So there's parts of it where I'm in the shot only because it's the only shot we have, right, and we can't cut away from the material required. But that expression you're seeing on my face is that expression you see a lot, which is, how can I be a ghost in these guys' lives? The way it happened was, it's a film about two men, Spike O'Sullivan and Packy Collins.
Packy's a great man as well.
Extraordinary men. Both remarkable men. In fact, that whole community, that small community of men, Craig O'Brien, Mark Kennedy, these extraordinary people who showed me a level of trust, real trust, that actually was humbling beyond belief. Because I was waiting for it to snap back. I was waiting for it, because they've been fucked over before. They've had people come into their lives and make all kinds of claims and then fuck them over. And what happened was, there's a producer, Tim Palmer. Tim Palmer was in a hotel in, I don't know where the fuck the hotel was, but he was in a steam room in the hotel, sitting there alone, hungover, and the door opens, and this formidable form, middleweight form, is in the silhouetted in the doorway. He walks in, closes the door, and sits down beside Tim. And Tim sees this ridiculous moustache, like some kind of cartoon character. And he's wondering, who's this cunt? So they sit there in silence for a little bit, and then I don't know who initiates conversation, but in the shortest time frame, Tim Palmer produced Into the West. He's a great producer. Ooh. So Tim is sitting there going, this guy's fucking amazing. Now, Tim also produced Patrick's Day. So they have this long conversation, and he finds out that Spike is in a position where he is 3 fights away from fighting for the world title. And Tim is trying to figure out, how the fuck do I not know this guy? How have I not heard of him? He's this thick Cork accent, this ridiculous moustache, and this beautiful nature. So he gets out of his steam room, they say goodbye or whatever, and then Tim is sitting there and he's getting dressed and he's going, there's something in this. And then he calls me. And he says, you like boxing, don't you? Yeah. He says, there's no money in it, but how do you feel about making a documentary? And I went, there's no money in it, you cunt. That's your fucking, that's your pitch as a producer. I'm in. So he tells me the story, and I listen to it and I go, okay, I'm not sure what the situation is. I know that in my life I have no money. I know that in my life the banks are trying to repossess our house. All those realities. I know that I've been blacklisted, I've been shut down, all those things. So despite the success of Patrick's Day, you're right back to square one. Actually, you're worse than you were before you made your first movie, because now you're the enemy, with no justification and all driven by prejudice. But he arranged for me to meet with Spike. So we met out close to where Packy's gym is, which is in
Blanchardstown, is it?
Yeah. What's the name of it? Corduff.
Corduff, yeah.
Amazing area. Amazing people. Jesus Christ. And an era it looks like an area that's caught in the era of the 80s. So I meet with Spike, and Spike comes in, and he's this really gentle, shy bloke with this thick Cork accent. And we sit down and we start talking, and he looks at me and goes, geez, you're big. But he looks at me as if he said, geez, you're big, I'm going to take you down.
Of course.
The fighter's spirit.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we sit down and we start talking. And then after a short time, Tim just feels like he doesn't exist, because we just fucking click. It's one of those things, like brotherhood. You just click. Yeah. You and me had it. It's a thing where you go, yes, I feel like I know this guy forever. Mm-hmm. It's like when I saw you downstairs, I just hugged you like an old brother, It's that thing. So then I said, okay, let's see what happens. So they raised a bit of cash for me and a cinematographer, Linda Curtin, wonderful woman, to go to Los Angeles for the first fight. And he won his first fight. And it was extraordinary to see Golden Boy and Oscar de la Hoya and all that world and all that back.
Strange, isn't it?
But all that backstage stuff is all great when someone's winning. You know, it's all, you know, it's like a whorehouse whenever there's winning. So it's a free whorehouse.
It's like a whorehouse with no whores when they're losing.
Exactly. And you're stuck with the bill.
Yeah,
But
still charging you for drinks.
yeah.
Oh,
But anyway, so we end up, that's the first stage of it. And then we run out of money. And by money, I mean there's fuck all money in the first place, but there's no money then afterwards. And then he has a second fight in Las Vegas, fighting David Lemieux. This really solid.
Yeah.
And there's no money. There's literally no money. So, again, it's back to this idea. It's the boxers. It's the trainer. It's that community. And it's friends who paid for me to go over. I went over on my own. It was a crew of one, nobody else. Now, again, for the people who watch your podcast, the standard crew, again, Robin will know this, but a standard skeleton crew on a film, a skeleton crew would be 7 or 8 people, and that'd be deemed to be a tiny crew. But this is nobody except me, on a broken camera that I don't know how to use, with a dodgy mic, and paid for by friends and the people themselves in that community. Not the Arts Council, not Culture Ireland, not the Film Board, not the people who get paid a handsome annual salary to support art. Despite the extraordinary success of Patrick's Day, I was told to go fuck myself. And multiple times as well. I was also set up by somebody, but that's a different conversation. But anyway, so I arrive in Vegas. Whatever way the flights worked and the time differences, it's about 5:30 in the morning. And I'm fucked. And I can't contact the lads because this is not poor mouth. I'm just trying to give your viewers an idea of how production works. And you would have experienced this yourself at the beginning of the MMA, you know.
Absolutely, man.
You know, the people have this idea that you have this fabulous lifestyle, and in fact, it bears no relation. You're actually poorer than people on welfare.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing in this country.
Yeah. But it's an understandable thing because back to the idea of advertising, we're conditioned to think that people on television or whatever have a certain lifestyle.
Try or stay. That's what we say. Try or stay.
Yeah, it's a great phrase. So anyway, so we arrived there, and I can't find the lads. The phone won't work. And I'm walking around Vegas, and there was supposed to be 120 quid put into my account. And there was a stall put on it by the bank for whatever reason. So I arrive in Vegas with nothing, literally nothing. And I'm a grown-ass man. I've made a couple of movies. And I'm walking around going, this is the moment where you discover who the fuck you are. Yeah. Yet again, you don't discover who you are when you're in a position of power. You discover who you are when you're in a position of no power.
Yeah.
You discover real humility. Now, you're either going to be a victim, walking around whining and blaming people, or you're going to go, what needs to be done? So I'm passing by a hotel, and I used to work in hotels when I was younger, so I know how hotels operate. I'm passing by a hotel, and there's a queue of people for the buffet. I see it through the window. I'm fucking starving. I didn't eat in the plane. And I'm going, okay, you've no money, you've a camera that you don't know how to operate, there's a hotel full of people queuing for a buffet, and you're going to find out who the fuck you are, yet again. So I stroll into the hotel, peacock chest out like I own the hotel. And as I'm passing by the girl at the front desk, I go, 237. And before she can answer, I go, is the fish on again today? And she goes, sorry? And I go, is the fish on again today, the same fish that was yesterday? And she goes, I don't know. Okay. And I'm walking away as she's answering. Now I notice she hasn't had time she's trying to figure out my accent, so I can see her watching me, and I walk over and there's a guy standing there, a Japanese guy, the cliche with cameras around his neck, the whole lot, waiting with his tray. And I walk over to him and I can feel her watching me, and just as I go over there I go, oh man, how you doing? Can I ask you a favour? She says, I have this camera here and I have no idea how to fucking use it. I'm a virgin in the whorehouse. Is there any chance you clearly know what you're doing? Could you give me, and before you know, me and him are talking, so she presumes I'm with him. So I'm moving along with him. He's giving me a free education on how to use the camera. I'm smelling the food coming closer. And eventually I just get a big tray of food, a mountain of food. I sit down, I says, is it okay if I sit with you? I don't want to be presumptuous. He goes, oh yeah. So I sit down with him, we're clearly together. I have a free breakfast, I get a free education on the camera, and by the time I meet the lads, I know how to use the camera.
Good the Irish.
So that's the Irish, yeah.
I was good the Irish.
Exactly. So that's the realities of the romantic idea of filmmaking. It's nonsense. Filmmaking is a non-stop series of tests. You talk about vulnerability earlier. I think vulnerability is a great word, and I think being vulnerable is a beautiful thing. We need to embrace being vulnerable.
Yes.
It doesn't mean weak.
No,
vulnerable is a strength. But that thing where you go, okay, I don't know what's happening next. So Packy and Spike are two amazing people, and the rest of the crew.
Vulnerability is only a bad thing around certain people.
Yeah, if it's exploited.
This is what I mean. So
yeah, weak people and corrupt people see vulnerability and they go, aha.
I know. They know what to do with it.
Yeah, horrible.
You
But
told me that.
vulnerability is a beautiful strength. But anyway, so Packy and Spike are there and the rest of the crew are there. And I'm nervous and self-conscious and all those kind of things. And I don't know where I'm staying. Actually, no, sorry. The producer did manage to get me a hotel room. Have you ever been to Vegas?
Too many times.
It's nuts. It's the only place I've ever been in my life that I have no interest in returning to.
Oh, it's the only place where people ring me and say, listen, Vegas is sorted, your tickets are there. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't like Vegas.
It's like a graveyard where the corpses are all walking around.
I can smell the death in the place.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. And it's like, hi.
Yeah.
The devil's everywhere.
Yeah, oh, it's incredible. But anyway, but I ended up having an incredible series of experiences with extraordinary people over there. So the people blew me away. And I tend to get a bit of insomnia when I go away. So at 4:30 in, you're always you're always down the back lanes figuring out what this place really is, what the dark soul of the place really is, and what the actual humanity is. But we ended up in this incredible environment with these incredible people where I was shown a level of courtesy from Golden Boy, from all the people controlling it, from everybody, that I was allowed access to that world that a lot of people wouldn't normally be allowed access to. Now, I snuck into venues as well because the camera was really small, all that kind of stuff. But the consequence of it was that we ended up having a very intimate overview of these guys' lives because they got to the point where they stopped giving a fuck that I was there. Not because they're disrespectful, but because I was a ghost and because they were trusting me. Then he ends up getting into the ring. He gets knocked out in the first fucking round. Sucker punch. Incredible. And at that stage, I'm not thinking of a movie. I'm thinking of a guy that I've come to know and love.
So you get knocked out.
And the pain and the horror. So you're talking about that idea of what's it like to be backstage. To see somebody you love get knocked out. And then for them to get back up off their knees. And then you're going, okay, well, obviously it's a 3-fight deal. This is the second fight. So whatever parameters we had for this documentary is over. But I immediately you're going, that's irrelevant. What's only relevant is this human being. So I go back to the dressing room and I switch the camera off, which is rule 101 in documentary filmmaking. You never switch the camera off. Yeah. But I switched it off knowingly, going, there are some times when people deserve their privacy. There are some times when you're not going to be there going, I'm going to put the camera in the corner and let it secretly film. Because that's not who I want to be right now. Wow. I want to be one of these fucking people, you know what I mean?
Fair fucking play.
So, but then it turns out that they go into the hospital and they're already planning their return. So I meet with them later that evening. I'm in a state of devastation. Golovkin is fighting Canelo and we've, ringside seats. Like Mike Tyson is standing beside me and all I can think of is Spike. Golovkin and Canelo, two of the greats of all time, are fighting in front of you and I can't even see it because I'm just thinking of Spike. And I'm going, how did he get to me? What is it in both Spike and Packy and their larger, small community? What is it that got to me? What is it that has made me realize that switching off a camera was more important for their dignity than my film? And I'm trying to figure it out and trying to process it. And then I meet them later that evening. And they're fucking laughing. Spike has a big fucking shiner and they're laughing. And they're telling me what their plans are. And I still didn't film anything. Then the next day, we said, look, we're getting up early. We're going to go out and see the sights because we haven't had the chance to see the sights. And I go, okay, well, I'm going to film that. We go out onto the Vegas Strip like a bunch of fucking teenagers. Never offensive, but fucking hilariously anarchic. And these guys behaved like fucking lunatics on tour. Like schoolboys who should not be doing what they're doing, but are pushing the edge all the time. Yeah. And I thought, what's amazing is that all this talk about mental health, a lot of the times from C-list celebrities who are trying to fucking virtue signal, these guys were the manifestation, the personification of actual mental health, the power of defining yourself by the future as opposed to being withheld from engagement because of your past. And they were amazing, and it was all about this positive idea. So then I'm going, okay, maybe there's something more in this documentary. Maybe the documentary is not dead. Maybe this is a documentary about getting up off your knees. So we continued. I went to Boston. He fought in Boston, an amazing fight. He fought in Mayo beforehand as well. He was gentle with the guy because it was a warm up because he went up to one higher weight. Went to Boston. Who paid for me to go to Boston? A friend of Packy's, Mike, beautiful guy, Mike McCormick. Who put me up in their gaff, in their fucking house that they were renting. Spike and Packy and the lads gave me a room or a bunk in a room to stay. That's how, not just embedded, because embedded is a different connotation these days. That's how fucking kind they were to me, how trusting they were to me. And at the beginning, there was a contract that the producer wanted a contract signed because he needed a contract signed for Virgin Media in order to release the material. And he was asking Packy back and forward to sign it. And Packy said, well, I need to have a look at it. Until eventually the producer says to me, I'm not sure if he's going to sign this contract. And Packy said, look, the problem here is that what happens, now we didn't know each other at this stage. He says, what happens if we trust you? And what happens if something goes wrong and you film that and then you release that? And I'm thinking to myself, he's right. He's fucking absolutely right. So this is the producer had relayed this to me. So then I went to the back. I took Packy and Spike aside. And I said, lads, we don't know each other well at all. But if you know anything about me, you know that I will take this to my grave and I will bury this film before I would ever humiliate either of you. And Packy looked at me and without hesitation, he signed the contract. That's the caliber of these men. They take you at your word.
Packy is a special person.
Yeah.
Not only as a person, he's a special coach.
Yeah.
Because not every coach would do that.
But he knew, and this is interesting because he's a life coach.
Of course.
But he knew that when I gave my word, it was more important than any contract. Because I could have broke a contract anyway. People break contracts all the fucking time. If I wanted to screw him over, I'd use the contract to screw him over. But he made a decision. He made a call, a decision based on his perception of character. And that's those moments where when you're editing the documentary, when you're going back over, a brilliant editor called Morris O'Carroll edited, and we're going back over the material, like hours and hours and hours of material, trying to build a thematic interrogation. You know, the idea of back to myth making. When it comes to war and life, which is more important, the myth or the reality? So that's a theme throughout. And you're trying to find a way of interrogating that constantly. And then you're going, okay, every time I went back to Packy, I was going, this guy, his act of faith was amazing. Then I went back to Spike and I go, his act of faith is amazing. So at the end of it, I'm in Spike's house with his missus and his kids. I spend the night there, an extraordinary 24 hours in the company of 4 remarkable people. And I walk away going, the privilege of this film is not awards or money or any of those things, all of which I've gotten through cinema. The privilege of this film was to be allowed into the lives of people with such trust. And the payoff is that when we had the premiere at the Kerry Film Festival, Spike sat there with his family and Packy sat there with his family and they were moved to tears and they were so proud of this film. And at the end of it you go, that's the joy of and art and power of being allowed into a world with a camera and the consequence of post-production leading to a dark room with a light shining that moves mountains. And those guys made that happen.
No, it was an incredible emotional kind of thing because, and especially as a fighter, I know, like, as I say, I can see this stuff. I know these moments, you know what I mean? And people don't see this stuff. I was glad to see you experiencing it as well because I know as a human you would be like, even when you walked into the room there when this was on, I was like, I'm looking forward to Teddy walking in. Well, there's 40 people in here on a Sunday and it's like, what the fuck is this? You know, because that's what fighting does and people don't see that part of it. I don't know if this week, but you seen it on Saturday. I was on the Tommy Tiernan show. So the surprise Tommy Tiernan show, and I actually talked about that. I talked about the idea that they edit her up, but I talked about the idea of fighting being one of the most spiritual things that I've ever done in my life, and it made me love people that I never met in my life, opponents. If you look in and you see it's like, oh, it's barbaric, I do understand that, I totally do, but remember what your ma said to you when you were small. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And sometimes that's what it is. Some of the comments on Twitter last night, absolutely amazing. Cheers, thanks so much. But some of the comments of the people that don't understand and that are why would you write something like that? I don't understand why people literally click the little thing with the pen to write a tweet and then start proceeding against somebody that you don't know anything about. I am an extraordinary person and I have saved many, many lives and I have changed many, many lives in my life. So if you could do 10% of what I've done in my life, I will tip my hat to you and you'll never get a negative word from me.
But those are the same people in that gang of 20 who kicked the kid when he's on the ground. Twitter is that same gang of 20. Do
you know what the thing is? It actually gives them power and it gives them the I don't know, the kind of the pat on the back that they're looking for these days, you know?
It celebrates cowardice. Yeah. But the other problem, and this is one of the small things we need to recognise, is that the ratio of that small gang of 20 against the huge community of amazing kids, which is the larger world of Twitter. Like 90% of the comments, maybe much more than 90% of the comments in relation to you being on Tommy Tiernan are glowingly, lovingly embracing.
Yes.
And yet we give all the focus to these little cowards, these little rats running around. They thrive on the emotional response that they've created in us. Again, back to the idea of, you know, the broadsheet trolls or whatever. They love even being mentioned now.
And here's a tale, all right? There once was a story about a man who broke his nose with his own mouth. Terry, to get you in here is always a pleasure. I would do this for a long, long time, and I could do this for hours. That was episode 109. Make sure you tune into the Virgin Media tomorrow night and catch out the Spike
8 p.m.
documentary. 8 p.m. Is that what's on it?
10 p.m.
10 p.m. maybe. There's a little button on your remote, you know that, and it says guide, and it sorts all this stuff out, because people do say, what time is it on it? Ask your fucking television. Look after yourself, and Happy New Year.